Part 92. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Enchenmi San. Chapter 946. Is he the biologist? Kaylan stared at the Sphinx in astonishment. Then this means, he is one of the survivors, of this hive city 500,000 years ago. In a sense, the tunnel dwellers entrenched in the number 4 garbage tunnel can also be regarded as survivors of the hive city, but the group of tunnel dwellers Kaylan and the others encountered now are obviously the first batch of tunnel dwellers that year. The descendants of the tunnel dwellers have not been eroded, and naturally they cannot have a lifespan of 500,000 years. Then, the monster called Sphinx in front of you is probably the only person involved to witness the disaster 500,000 years ago. At least it is the only one Kaylan knows so far, except Nieto, who is not a human being. He won't answer any of your questions, Nieto said, because his memory has been completely erased and only his animal instincts remain. As soon as Nieto finished speaking, the Sphinx suddenly moved. 1 second it was still 30 meters away from Kaylan, and the next second, it was already close to him, with the pair of huge claws in front of him. With a roaring sound breaking through the air, it was thrust into Kaylan's chest. But Kaylan did not choose to retreat, but directly hit the pair of claws, letting the sharp claws pierce him to the core, and at the same time, he slashed the engineer shovel in his hand into the Sphinx's chest. In the gap between the first 2 large crystal carapace, the Sphinx wanted to expand its claws outward and tear Kaylan's chest apart, but the living armor directly locked the pair of claws inside Kaylan's chest. Instead, Kaylan used an engineer shovel to pry it open. The carapace on the Sphinx's chest fell off, and a large bloody hole was cut out of the Sphinx's chest in 2 strokes. It's not that Kaylan likes to use this kind of playing method of exchanging injuries for injuries and risking lives, it's because he simply has no better choice. The time stop ability allows Kaylan to see the Sphinx clearly in an instant attack method. The pair of sharp claws is actually a feint attack, and the real killing move is actually the scorpion tail hidden behind him. If Kaylan chooses to retreat or dodge, there is a high probability that he will be hit by the needle on the scorpion tail. Instead of betting on whether the unknown toxin would have an impact on the brain, Kaylan would rather endure real physical trauma with controllable severity. Even if he was lucky enough to avoid the poisonous needle, Kaylan would instantly lose the initiative and fall into the opponent's attack rhythm. Moreover, by crashing into the opponent's arms, you can not only avoid the attack of the scorpion tail, but also gain a rare opportunity. The Sphinx's chest has been forcefully opened by a pair of large hands condensed from the living armor, revealing the powerful beating heart in his chest. Although Kaylan had many questions to ask the Sphinx, in this level of battle, he did not dare to hold anything back. The sharp side edge of the engineer shovel instantly cut into the heart of the basketball-sized heart. Suddenly, hot and smelly blood spurted out, turning Kaylan into a bloody man. But the Sphinx did not die. Instead, it lifted Kaylan's entire body and threw it out hard. Kaylan had already adjusted his figure in mid-air and landed lightly on the ground. When he stood up, the terrifying penetrating wound on his chest had been completely healed. On the other hand, the Sphinx's huge heart is cut in half, and the extremely high-pressure arterial blood is continuously sprayed out from the ventricles and atria. The heart structure of this monster is very similar to that of humans, with 2 atria on the left and 2 on the left ventricles, but the biggest difference is that this heart is much larger than the human heart and the muscles are extremely strong. The Sphinx's heart did not heal, but it did not fall down either. Instead, it roared several times at Kaylan, which was full of threats. The Sphinx charged at Kaylan again, but this time Kaylan was already on guard. He ducked around to the side of it. Before the scorpion tail fell down, he had already used an engineer shovel and living armor to attack it. The Sphinx created several wounds on its side that were deep enough to show the bones, and then quickly opened the distance again. It has no healing ability, but the heart was damaged and did not die. Even its movements were not affected much, so it seems that the heart is not its key point. Kaylan analyzed in his heart. The monster in front of him couldn't help but make him think about it for a long time. The missing Leighton. This is not to say that Leighton has any resemblance to this monster, it's just that Leighton has 4 hearts installed in his body. When he was in the glacier ruins, Leighton only had 3 artificial hearts. But later, when the god hunting group made a lot of money, Leighton realized that his strength had become a hindrance, so he went through 3 more reconstruction surgeries, increasing the number of hearts to 4. 2 of his 4 hearts are real hearts mass-produced using organ culture technology, and the other 2 are cyborg hearts with a semi-mechanical and semi-biochemical structure. Normally, 1 real heart and 1 are used. A cyborg heart, at a critical moment, can drive 4 hearts at the same time. For the modified people, these hearts are actually like the reactors of battleships. The more they are activated, the various attributes of the body will be improved. The greater the amplitude, the greater the burden on the body. In addition to strengthening the body, the biggest advantage of multiple hearts is that if 1 or several hearts are damaged, as long as there is still 1 heart that can work normally, the modified person can survive. Otherwise, Leighton had already died in the stone room at the glacier ruins. Does the Sphinx also have plural hearts? Kaylan would not be surprised by anything that happens to this kind of Stitch monster, not to mention that this is a Stitch monster that has been eroded. However, in this Stitch monster, Kaylan saw the shadow of the fusion body. Although there are huge differences between the 2, they are in the same line of thinking, and they both combine the strongest abilities of various creatures. The parts are pieced together to form a perfect monster with almost no weaknesses. It's just that the Chimera plan finally succeeded only by relying on the power of erosion, and the fusion is obviously much higher in completion. What is the relationship between the Hive civilization and the Alpha civilization? For the people in the Hive city, that existence cannot be regarded as their belief, because the erosion caused by his power and forbidden knowledge is even called a disaster by the people in the Hive city. The situation of the Alpha civilization is completely different. Regardless of what the purpose of the Night Watch organization is, at least on the surface, the Alpha civilization extremely respects and worships the existence they call the Great God. Moreover, this is not a one-sided worship, at least, judging from various discoveries in the ruins of Alpha civilization. The Great God not only accepted the worship of the Alpha people, but even gave certain feedback. The feedback here does not refer to taboo knowledge or mutations due to erosion, but actual items. Blood of God. The seed of corrosion is a biological weapon created using the blood of God. The power of the original seed of corrosion, which possesses the blood of the true God, has been seen once by Kaylan at the ruins of the ancient bronze city. He himself also used the power of the seed of original corrosion to the drop of real God's blood in the seed completely activated the living armor, and defeated the army god Alexander controlled by the prophet. Kaylan himself knew nothing about the power contained in the blood of God. Although there are doubts about whether the great God has an entity and whether there is blood, something that only animals have, there is no doubt that this blood of God was indeed given to the Alpha people by that existence. There are similar records in many documents and memory fragments related to seed of corrosion. There is no refutation or explanation on this point in the information left by the Night Watch. Even if it is not the blood of a god, it is undoubtedly a carrier of power that is unimaginable to humans. With the technological level demonstrated by the Alpha civilization, Kaylan does not think they can create such a thing. Therefore, the great God is actually not bad to the believers on this planet, although those bloody sacrificial rituals are very barbaric and cruel from the perspective of modern people. The gift he gave to the Alpha civilization, completely worthy of these sacrifices, and even far beyond the value of the sacrifices. If the Alphas are the descendants of the Hive people, what made them fear the disaster from the beginning, and even sank the entire Hive to the bottom of the sea to prevent the spread of the disaster, and later became extremely to revere that being and become his most loyal believer? Kaylan couldn't help but have a guess in his head. Whether it is erosion or disaster, this is probably one of the means used by that existence to expand its own power. He has used this method to conquer countless interstellar civilizations, and there are many ways of conquest. Devouring an entire civilization counts as one, and making an entire civilization become one's believers also counts as one. In order to prevent itself from becoming extinct, the Alpha civilization, or the Hive civilization, had to choose to surrender to him. As time goes by, those who become his followers will inevitably be eroded by the forbidden knowledge, and those who cannot adapt will those who died or became carcasses, those who could adapt survived and became the Alphas in the eyes of the Ark. And where there is obedience, there must be resistance. The Night's Watch should be the underground resistance organization among the Alphas. They should have inherited the history handed down from the Hive civilization era, and know the truth of everything that happened back then. Although this guess is very exaggerated, logically speaking, there is no obvious loophole. According to this statement, Alpha civilization is the Hive civilization, and the Hive civilization is the Earthling. The Alphas are the Earthlings. K'lan has had such a hypothesis countless times, but he has always been afraid to make this conclusion because there is not enough evidence to support it. But now, with the discovery of the Hive civilization, the outline of this hypothesis has gradually become clear. Stand up. Yagunaktor is not an alien battleship built by another civilization, but a legacy left to these descendants by the Hive civilization, the ancestors of the Alphas. I guessed it right. K'lan murmured that he was originally asking himself, hoping that the mysterious subconscious mind would give a correct or incorrect answer, but what he didn't expect was that it was Nieto who answered him first. Your guess is basically correct. The predecessor of the Alpha civilization on the ground is the Hive civilization, Nieto said. Not every person in the Hive city is as stupid as the people in this Hive city. They would rather his home sinks to the bottom of the sea and he refuses to accept his gift. The law of the jungle, the survival of the fittest, is the natural law. What's more, he is so kind and gives the believers the greatest degree of freedom, but these people still, unsatisfied, he attempts to shake the glory of greatness with the power of an earthworm. Destruction is the destined outcome. Are the Alphas really Earthlings? K'lan felt that his heartbeat was much faster. He had an indescribable feeling. For a moment, he wanted to shout loudly to pour out the suppressed emotions in his heart, and he also wanted to find someone to think about in his head. He poured out everything at once, letting the other party share his shock and excitement. Ian's remaining stubbornness kept telling him that this was impossible, but his reason said that there was no problem with the logic of the entire conjecture. This paragraph in the middle, all the causes and consequences can be matched. Even Ian's subconscious mind, which he has always trusted the most, silently told him in the depths of his mind. This is the truth. Ian's movements slowed down a beat, and most of his face was torn off by the Sphinx, revealing the white facial bones underneath, but he didn't care. The bright red living armor instantly filled the gap, forming half of the face. A skull-like mask. I have two more questions, can you answer me? K'lan asked. Although Nieto is an enemy, what it said was not deceiving K'lan. Unless it could control Ian's mind, the subconscious mind gives misleading information. I know what you want to ask. You are curious as to why the humans of the Hive civilization arrived at Alpha Star so many years before the Ark. You don't know where they came from, let alone when they set off. In that era, let alone interstellar travel, human beings are still in the stage of eating raw materials and drinking blood. And your second question is why Alpha civilization disappeared from this world. Nieto, who has the ability to spy on thoughts, directly read out the thoughts in Ian's mind, but his next sentence made K'lan feel disappointed. These two questions can basically be regarded as one question, but I can't answer you now, Nieto said. Originally, if you promised to dedicate your body and soul to the great God, I could tell you all the truth, but now, you are just a mistake that must be erased. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 947. Before Nieto could finish speaking, a drone with a very different shape from Ark's appeared in the sky over the battlefield, shooting a stream of high-pressure liquid directly into the back of the Sphinx's neck. The wounds on the Sphinx's body that were fatal to ordinary mutants began to heal at a speed visible to the naked eye. To be precise, it was not healing, but mutation. The newly grown tissue was not soft. The flesh and blood were replaced by hard crystalline scales. After a while, the wounds were completely sealed by these crystalline scales, and the same scales also grew under the skin of the uninjured areas. What did you inject into it? Catalyst number 45, this is his last research result before his death. Only he knows the specific effect, Nieto replied. The bone spurs on the Sphinx's back began to proliferate, becoming longer and thicker, and then gradually expanded outwards, forming several large irregular-shaped exoskeletons. These exoskeletons first wrapped its back, then crossed its shoulders and extended to its chest and abdomen. Naturally, Kalan would not let the Sphinx evolve to complete. In the process, he continued to attack the Sphinx, especially the locations where the exoskeleton and scales grew, but he soon discovered that if you cut out those scales from the surface of the Sphinx's body, larger and thicker scales will soon grow out of the places where the old scales fell off. The same goes for the exoskeleton, where the cut parts will become thicker. The texture will also become tighter. Just like a person's leg hair will become thicker and thicker as it is shaved, the Sphinx's body will also have a stress response to external attacks, constantly strengthening those parts that have been traumatized. The speed of the Sphinx is also getting faster, and the force of the attacks is getting more fierce each time. Assuming that the original physical attribute value of the Sphinx is 1, and after being injected with the madness potion, it is 3, then this number has gradually it has improved to 4 and is gradually approaching 5. Previously, Kalan, who had time stop, had a slight advantage in terms of speed and reaction, but now even if Kalan uses time stop to predict the Sphinx's movements, it is difficult to completely avoid the opponent's attack. This guy's speed is really too fast. Kalan can see its movements clearly, but he just can't avoid it. After several rounds of fighting, Kalan not only failed to expand his previous advantage, but suffered a lot at this time. Almost 1/3 of his body was a prosthetic body temporarily repaired with living armor. A right leg and half of his left arm are prosthetic limbs that are completely condensed from living armor. Kalan began to retreat. He could only rely on the tree trunks as shelter and obstruction to block the Sphinx's attack for himself. But even a dozen giant trees that were as thick as each other's arms were nothing more than nothing in front of the Sphinx. In a matter of seconds, the area where the two sides were fighting quickly formed a huge blank area. A large number of trees were cut down and then torn apart. Tree fragments with an average size of only a palm were spread layer by layer on the ground. Ian's body has many more parts made of living armor. Now he has no time to regenerate his limbs. As long as he can protect his brain, it will be no problem even if his whole body is condensed with living armor. This is like the kind of super-modified people with a modification degree of more than 90%. These people, except for their brains, are almost entirely made of artificial parts. They have very little human content, but even so, they are still recognized as human beings, although among the people, this kind of super cybomorphs have always been called cyborg monsters. Ze-Logo seemed to have fallen into a deep sleep. No matter how much Kalan called, there was no response. In order to protect her, Kalan simply stuffed the black armor that Ze-Logo had transformed into his body, and used the living armor to completely protect her. Wrapped. You must be erased. You should not exist in this world. Nieto was still talking there must be a problem somewhere. Ability gods, yes, it must be those ability gods that are causing trouble. The rules of this world are distorted, so mistakes like you are made. Ability god. What is an ability god? Kalan couldn't help but ask after hearing this new word. Is it the enemy in the legend of Alpha civilization that fights against the bullshit god they believe in? It is mentioned in many religious documents of the Alpha civilization that the great god they believe in is not omnipotent in the true sense. He also has a mortal enemy that is difficult to destroy. This mortal enemy is so powerful that it has even been records of multiple victories over the great gods. Their armies are constantly conquering in distant time and space, and the battles and killings never stop. The Alpha civilization cultivates those monsters and those biological weapons in order to create an army for the great god they believe in. During the duel with the Prophet and Alexander, a piece of information once flowed into Ian's mind: the god that the Alpha people believe in, his enemies are like the stars in the universe, too numerous to count. One of the extremely powerful enemies is a huge superstar that emits infinite heat, and has self-awareness. Fire god Thuga, in that memory, the Alpha people once called this conscious star. The power that killed Alexander came from Thuga. Of course, this power did not come from Thuga itself, but reproduced an elemental creature called the Colossus of Fire in the form of projection. The projection of the flame Colossus had only 1/10,000th of the power of the original body, but it still easily tore Alexander apart. One can imagine how terrifying the true strength of this elemental creature would be. Such terrifying creatures are just the descendants of Thuga. Then you can imagine how exaggerated the power of these alien gods can be. This kind of power, let alone numbers, may not be imaginable even with the utmost human imagination. Have you come into contact with the god of fire? Nieto's voice was trembling. Have you come into contact with the god of fire, Thugya? I don't know what the contact you means. If I remember correctly, that power should come from the blood of the true god in the body of the original erosion seed. To be honest, I am also very confused as to why that god's the blood will summon the warriors of his mortal enemy. That drop of blood was tampered with. Nieto became angry. The damn Night Watch, they will pay the price for their betrayal. Weren't all the night watchmen already wiped out? What do you mean? Are there any survivors among them? Kaylan dodged the Sphinx's punch and asked immediately. But Nieto did not answer Ian's question this time, but said to himself, they think they can gain the power to fight against the great gods after coming into contact with Thugya? They are simply ignorant. Ignorance. Ridiculous. Ketugi doesn't care about any non-elemental creatures at all. Their final fate is just to be used as consumables by Thugya, and the entire civilization is thrown into the millstone of endless war and ground to ashes. No one the ability god is as kind as he is, and only he is willing to accept every believer and allow believers to become part of the great god himself. Eating the body and soul of believers sounds so great. Kaylan sarcastically said without mercy, perhaps the AI thinking logic of biological computing is too simple? It can't even do such a simple thing. I can't even see through it. You are really a loyal dog of that bullshit god. No matter which alien god caused trouble and caused your birth, you will die here today. Don't imagine that the alien god will save you. For them, whether it is the Hive people, the Alpha people, the Earth people, or you are just an insignificant ant. They just glanced at the world unintentionally, which led to the birth of your mistake, but they are not willing to waste more energy on you. As long as they want, they can create billions of you at any time, but no matter what they do, they can't defeat the great gods. But as far as I know, that bullshit god you worship seems to have lost many battles. That's because those relatives and servants are too incompetent. Incompetent races and civilizations should be wiped out in war. As for the great god himself, he has never been defeated. 2 more drones appeared and injected 2 bunches of medicinal liquid into the Sphinx's body. The Sphinx's eyes were severely bloodshot, and the entire white part of his eyes had turned red, and his face was full of swelling. The blood vessels were beating loudly, and its breathing sounded like the roar of a heavy engine, resounding throughout the sky. The Sphinx's speed is getting faster and stronger, and its power is getting stronger. According to the standard just now, the Sphinx's attributes should have exceeded 7 times the basic value at this time. Kaylan has gone from being small at the beginning. Advantage, then evenly matched, and then gradually fell into a disadvantage. Now, he can only run and dodge blindly. Not only does he have no chance to counterattack, but from time to time the Sphinx will seize the opportunity and take advantage of Ian's body. Remove some parts. If Lan was restrained when he fought with 33 before because he was afraid of hurting 33, then now he has no strength to fight back at all. Nieto probably used all his trump cards in order to eliminate Lan. Lan doesn't know how long the enhanced state of the Sphinx can last, but at least before the effect of the drug wears off, there is no problem in forcing Lan into a desperate situation. Even if the Sphinx's combat power no longer improves, in the current situation, Lan can only hold on for a few minutes at most. It's not that Lan has never thought about escaping outside the jungle hunting ground, but Nieto can obviously see Ian's thoughts. Whenever Lan intends to move towards the edge of the hunting ground, the Sphinx will give up the attack and turn around. And to cut off Ian's retreat route and force Lan back, after several attempts, Lan not only failed to get close to the edge of the hunting ground, but instead returned to the central area where he had fought Wilson before. Are you really going to die here today? Lan has encountered desperate situations many times, but this kind of thought rarely occurs, but this time, the overwhelming fighting power displayed by the Sphinx made Lan feel a suffocating despair. Lan had never felt this way before when facing a behemoth like Alexander. Perhaps it's because Alexander's main target is not Lan, but the undead crew members hiding on the Ark, but the goals of Nieto and Sphinx are different. The feeling of being locked by killing intent makes people around Lan. The air became stagnant, he even had the illusion that he was moving inside a large gelatinous object, and every movement had to overcome huge resistance to complete. I should have another trump card. Lan does have one more trump card that he hasn't played yet. Holy word. But thinking about the conversation with Nieto just now, Lan couldn't help but think of one thing: the gazing he felt the last time he used the holy word came from the belief of the Alpha people. Great God or a different God who is his enemy? If it was really that God, why would he respond to Ian's request? You know, the content of Ian's request was to kill his servant. Even if this God is unreliable, he will not do anything to himself. Enemies of believers do what they ask for, right? P.S. Thanks to Haku Wien for the 1,500 starting coins, thanks to book friend 2022110421471750 for the 100 starting coins. P.P.S. I have some bad news. I did the nucleic acid test on Monday, and then I received the news today that the mixed tube was positive and had a yellow code. I went to a special nucleic acid point in the afternoon to do a single tube test. The result has not come out yet. I feel like it's okay. I'm a little sleepy and my throat is a little dry. I don't know if it's because of the weather or psychological effects. Unless the situation is really bad enough that I can't type, I probably won't stop updating. If I am really positive and the symptoms are a bit severe, I may use the extras I wrote before to make up for perfect attendance during the most uncomfortable days. After all, there is only one leave request note left this month, which may not be enough. I hope everyone will forgive me. In addition, everyone should also pay attention to personal protection. Although it is relaxed, try not to go to crowded places, wear a mask and disinfect at all times. This thing is not chickenpox. It does not mean that you will be immune after being infected once. The more times you are infected, the situation will get worse. We have been well protected for 3 years, and now we have to protect ourselves. At present, many members who are often active in the reader group have been infected. According to everyone's feedback, the virus is actually not that scary, especially for us young people. Remember to stock up on some cold medicines such as ibuprofen to reduce fever. And you can also prepare some throat lozenges and loquat ointment. It is said that it can relieve the most uncomfortable symptom, dry and sore throat. Finally, as the old saying goes, remember to drink more hot water. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen San. Chapter 948. Uncharted Waters, the City Under the Sea. 4 people and 1 aircraft formed a standard reconnaissance and advancement lineup, walking slowly on the streets of the underwater city. The original blanket search plan failed in the first minute of execution. -90% of the doors and windows of the buildings in this undersea city are locked. If a forced breakthrough is made, it will directly trigger the fire in the building. Self-destruction device. If the one who broke through was not the lone walker mecha driven by Valentina, I am afraid that the team would have been reduced by this time. As for the remaining 10% of buildings with damaged locking systems, the contents of the building have basically been corroded by seawater. Only some pieces of furniture that are so rotten that only a metal frame is left are still fixed to the ground and on the wall. One glance can tell that these buildings have no exploration value at all. Only some inscriptions engraved on metal objects or walls seem to be of some use, but neither the ghost owl who heard the whispers earlier nor anyone else could decipher these inscriptions written in alpha script. After entering the underwater city after that strange revelation never happened again. The phantom magnetic field that everyone was most worried about before does not seem to exist at all. But this cannot make the hounds feel relieved. The previous revelation, including the smell smelled by the hounds, the stone pillars scribbled by Chi Hanfan, and the phrase "leave the bed" heard by the ghost owl, are all there. It means that there are problems in this place, and these problems cannot disappear for no reason. This kind of metaphysics can only appear in that kind of magical program that is obviously full of bugs but can run stably, and it will never happen in the Alpha civilization. In the ruins. When things go wrong, there must be monsters. The absence of any abnormal phenomena is the biggest anomaly in itself. This thing should be a road sign, right? The team was marching to a crossroads. At the intersection of 2 roads, there was an upside-down stone pillar. The surface of the stone pillar was covered with water plants, and there were also a large number of things like corals and barnacles attached to it. Type of parasite. Compared with the previous, extremely clean undersea city located under the Forbidden Sea area, this undersea city is much dirtier, but this looks like the ruins of a city that has been soaked in the sea for tens of thousands of years. What it really should be like. The hound pulled out his dagger, cut open the water plants, and pried off the parasites. The surface of the stone pillars had been corroded to the point of being pitted, but fortunately the inscriptions on the stone pillars were all made of nano alloy. Even the stone pillars themselves all turned into powder. These inscriptions can still remain as they were back then. Come over and take a look. Can you understand what it means? Hound waved to the other people. The other 3 people immediately gathered around. They stared at the inscriptions for a long time, then looked at me, then at you, and shook their heads in unison. Same as the documentary relics we saw before, we can't understand alpha text at all, Chi Hanfan said with some helplessness. Although the whisper the ghost owl heard was most likely in alpha language, this should be limited to specific sentences. If alpha language can be mastered so easily, why would the undead crew bother to create some kind of symbiote? I think what Lao Chi said makes sense. Jolajito nodded. Old dog, think about it, those missing soldiers, hunters, etc., all left only one sentence of information, and Kailan he also made an extremely risky attempt. Do you remember that when the mimetic crisis broke out, Kailan encountered a small group of heretical sect members in a temporary shelter? That group of members had black-clothed members. The bishop existed and activated the holy word, and was interrupted by Kailan. I remember, Kailan said. Hound frowned and recalled. He said that he once leaned into the other party's ear and said a few words in alpha language, but the other party only responded to the phrase "leave the bed." There is a reaction. The black bishops cannot understand the alpha language, and the prophet only taught them the syllables that imitate the holy word. They only react to the sentence, which means there is something special about this sentence perhaps. This is the only alpha language that ordinary humans can understand. Then why is this sentence, Chi Hanfan couldn't help but ask, what does it mean? No one knows. Hound shrugged. What information is hidden in this sentence is something Kaylan has always wanted to understand, but he didn't have any clue until he set out for the Grey Mist Forest. Maybe Kaylan already knew some clues and didn't tell you, Ghost Owl whispered. Impossible, Kaylan has no need to hide these things from us. He chose to keep secrets alone in order to prevent us from being put in danger, but later he and we both discovered that even if we didn't know anything, there is no way to guarantee our safety. With the way the Immortal Crew and the Heretic sect behave, as long as we have a relationship with him, we will not be able to escape implication. Instead of dying inexplicably, it is better for everyone to speak clearly, so that even if you encounter any problems, we can work together and solve them together. Hound said, I believe Kaylan, he will not hide anything from us. It's hard to say. Jolajito suddenly shook his head and took a deep look at the old dog. Some things, not knowing, are a kind of protection. I've said it, even if we didn't know it, we wouldn't be able to escape. Look, could our current situation be avoided if we didn't know it? There was a hint of annoyance in Hound's tone. No, that's not what I meant. Zwilajito shook his head. Before, when Yagonactor was confronting the Black Fleet, Kaylan was not remotely connected to Yagonactor's control system, and handed over control of the battleship to Leighton. At that time, he briefly talked to me in private. Zwilajito looks like a tall and reckless man, but he is actually a very careful person with a very high IQ. Among the people who fell into the glacier ruins, Zwilajito is actually the explorer. The one with the highest points. Personal exploration points are similar to hunting group exploration points, consisting of the level and number of explorations of ruins. The higher the points, the higher the qualifications, which is the main criterion for the hunter's personal rankings. It is impossible for a lone hunter with only strength and no brain to complete so many exploration tasks alone. If it were placed in ancient times, Jolajito would definitely belong to the kind of hunter who seems to be powerful and sturdy, and wins with force, but in fact, on the other hand, he is a wise general with a fine mind and a thoughtful mind. It's just that his appearance, as well as his silent personality that doesn't like to talk much, will cause misunderstandings among many people who have not been around him for a short time, but these people naturally do not include Kaylan and the others. Kaylan wanted to chat with you privately? What did he say to you? Hound immediately asked. Of course, if Kaylan says something that we can't let us know, then don't tell us. I believe he did this, there must be his reasons. Kaylan didn't say this clearly, Jolajito said solemnly. He mainly mentioned something called forbidden knowledge to me. Forbidden knowledge refers to things related to the god believed in by Alpha civilization, Chi Hanfan asked with a flash of inspiration. That's right, Zwilajito nodded. This thing is just like the meme in the mimetic infection incident. As long as we know the content of these forbidden knowledge, we will be eroded by it. Both physical and cognitive changes will occur, so, for some things, not knowing is a kind of protection. According to what you say, it's really possible. The Hound raised his hand out of habit to rub the stubble on his chin, but instead hit the lower edge of the helmet of the deep diving suit with a pop and cursed in a low voice. After that, he took out his camera and took several photos of the inscriptions embedded in the stone pillars. Although they cannot understand these Alpha civilizations, what if they can get in touch with Kaylan again in the future? What if a member of the team suddenly received some kind of revelation and became able to understand these words? Although the chance is very low, it is always good to be fully prepared. There may be some crucial clues hidden in these photos. Cortana, you should continue to tell us what happened in the Grey Mist Forest, the Hound said to the blasphemer Mecha. Although I have heard you say it once, I always feel that there is something missing. There are many details, the whole story seems to be cut off section by section. I feel the same way, Chi Hanfan agreed. It's like a very rigidly edited script. In many places, the front and back parts don't match up. It's too jumpy. But I only remember these. Valentina said, the environment in the grey fog forest is very strange. I don't know if it's the fog or the trees, they seem to affect our memory. Just like that name and us, the lost woodcutter, after he went missing, we all completely forgot about the existence of such a person. If Kaylan hadn't suddenly remembered, none of us would have cared that there was one less person in the team. Valentina paused and continued, but even if we later found out that the lumberjack named Danning had indeed disappeared under K. Ian's prompt, I still had a strong sense of unreality in my mind. It's like the character Danning only exists in my imagination. There was no such person in the whole team from the beginning, his disappearance is just my imagination, and the most terrifying thing is that the details about this person, I can't remember anything about his appearance, clothes, etc., and the memories related to him have become extremely blurry as a dream. To be honest, I have a bad premonition. I think you are not the only one who has been separated from Kaylan. Hound whispered, the grey mist forest is too mysterious, I'm afraid except for Kaylan and Ze, except for Lugo, everyone else has now dispersed. Then Chi Hanfan's face turned ugly when he heard what the hound said. Without the protection of Kaylan and Ze Lugo, if other people were teleported to this place, it wouldn't be possible in an instant. Was he crushed to death by the water pressure? Valentina was able to survive and find the hound and their deep submersibles because of the blasphemer mecha. As for Ivan, Asano Akira, and others, with their physical strength, it is impossible to withstand the depth of thousands of meters under the sea. Of water pressure. It's more bad than good, it's bad. The dog murmured, that guy Asano Akira might be able to create miracles, but Ivan, I'm afraid. No, if Ivan is teleported to the bottom of the sea, he will not necessarily die. Zwilligito said, don't forget that there are still alienated cells of erosion seeds in his body. As long as the suppression device in the prosthetic arm is damaged, he will die. You can survive by relying on the power of the seed of corrosion. But in that case, wouldn't he become a vessel? He would rather die than become a monster. Hound whispered. As long as you live, there is always a way. Zwilligito patted the shoulders of Hound and Chi Hanfan, don't think so much first. Instead of worrying about them, we should worry about ourselves first. Our remaining oxygen generators is not enough to search the entire underwater city. If we find nothing more, we will have to give up. Giving up was the last resort in their plan. Just like the literal meaning, they gave up exploring the undersea city and let the blasphemer mecha take everyone to the surface. If they were lucky, maybe they would surface, but I always feel that it is impossible to leave this unknown sea so easily, so giving up can only be the last resort. As long as there is a shred of planning in other options, they will not choose this last resort. Let's move on while there is still plenty of oxygen concentrator. Hound sighed. He glanced at the pressure gauge of the container containing the oxygen concentrator. The number above showed that the oxygen concentrator could still last for 6 hours. At this position, 1 hour of oxygen is needed to flow to the surface, so their remaining exploration time is only 5 hours. For 5 hours, trying to find some clues in this undersea city was as difficult as climbing to the sky. I'm thinking about two things right now. One is that Yagunactor and Kaylan will be safe. The second is that the sea is directly above us, Chi Hanfan said. But at this moment, the blasphemer mecha suddenly assumed a defensive posture, using one arm to protect the 4 people, and the other arm raised its weapon, aiming at a person not far away. Building. There is life in that building, Valentina said. P.S. The single-tube nucleic acid result came out and it was negative. It was a false alarm and I breathed a sigh of relief. However, many local friends were positive, and some people who had not had time to do the nucleic acid test also developed corresponding symptoms currently. The peak period of this wave should be coming soon, and I still plan to retreat at home during this period, and by the way, I can also pay back the extra money I owe to the leader. Everyone should also pay attention to personal protection and stay out if possible. After the first wave of peak is over, the situation will improve a lot according to my friend who is studying medicine. It will be about 2 months until the Lantern Festival. After that, everything should be fine. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, and Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 949. Life Response. Are you sure? Hound and the others immediately became nervous. The biological detector of the blasphemer mecha has responded, but I can't be sure whether there is a malfunction in the equipment. Valentina said so, but the weapon held by the machine had its safety turned on, and the barrels of both barrels were open. All the blue charging indicators on the side lit up. As long as she thought about it, a high-power beam could directly penetrate the building with life reaction. The feedback from the detector is very vague. I only know that the size of the life forms in the building is not small, but the specific number, shape, and other information cannot be detected. Valentina added. Perhaps it is some kind of undersea creature that uses that building as a lair. The Hound leaned out half of the body from behind the blasphemer mecha and carefully looked at the building that Valentina was targeting. This is the cylindrical building, if you insist on saying what it looks like, is a bit like a shortened and thickened version of those large chimneys that can be seen everywhere in the Ark Industrial Zone. It's strange, the appearance of this building is not damaged. It should be intact. It shouldn't be. Ghost Owl muttered. Cortana, what did you see on the biological detector? The Hound asked again. It is a large fuzzy shadow with irregular and unclear edges. If this is a single creature, based on the ratio between the shadow and the building, the height of the body may be more than 20 meters, Valentina replied. It's a big guy. Chi Hanfan nodded, then patted the leg armor of the blasphemer. Don't use laser weapons underwater. The power will be greatly weakened by the sea water. Moreover, the energy of the laser beam is after seawater is absorbed, it will heat the seawater to a terrifying level, and our deep diving suits may not be able to withstand that temperature. Yes, Major, Valentina was stunned, and immediately put away the cluster laser cannon and drew out the heavy armor-piercing sword that came with the blasphemer mecha. It's just that she didn't activate the energy blade of the heavy armor-piercing sword, but used it completely as a blunt instrument. Of course, with Valentina's operating skills, she could completely use it when the armor-piercing sword came into contact. The energy blade is activated at the target's moment, which can not only save energy, but also maximize the original power of the heavy armor-piercing sword. To be honest, I think, it's not necessarily a big guy. Hound shook his head. Didn't you hear what Ziona said? It was a large, fuzzy shadow with irregular and unclear edges. If you see this on your CT image, it's not good news. It means there is a tumor in your body, and most likely it will be malignant. Tumor, malignant, cancer, you mean what the blasphemer mecha detected was a huge tumor? Chi Hanfan was stunned for a moment and asked in confusion. No, what I mean is that what the blasphemer sees may only be some tissues with signs of life, not necessarily a single living individual, such as an entire living insect nest, such as bloodthirsty bacteria blanket. You cannot define this type of life form in single or plural terms. It may be a complex ecosystem composed of countless tiny organisms, or it may be some kind of living, but cannot be items called biological individuals. But then again, you said that there is a tumor inside, which is not impossible. But a tumor that has been taken out of the body is losing the nutritional supply of the host. Do you think it's normal to be able to survive for so long after that? Should we go in and take a look? Or let the mechas split the building apart? Ghost Owl tightened his grip on the gun in his hand. This is a special underwater pistol with a 6-barreled magazine-free structure. Each barrel has a flechette with a hollow interior. Ark's underwater troops usually fill the hollow part of the flechette with high explosive bombs, but the Hound's flechettes are filled with concentrated crystal energy bomb. Just the gun in Ghost Owl's hand and the resonance of the crystal energy bomb caused by the 6 arrow-shaped bullets fired together were enough to blow up this chimney-shaped building. Don't alert the snake yet. If there is really a living insect nest inside, and you split the nest open, the millions of insects inside will not eat you up. The hound glanced at the ghost owl. Don't you think so? Hasn't our hunting group encountered this kind of thing before? No. Ghost owl shook his head. In other words, during this trip, most of the things we encountered were things I have never encountered before. It is difficult for those experiences of mine to be put to any use. As for the living insect nest you are talking about, I have never heard of such a thing. But, dealing with living insect nests is usually done by the army. Have you ever been a soldier? Hound asked. After graduating from compulsory education, I had 5 years of service experience, 2 years in reserve service, and the remaining 3 years in the garrison. Basically no combat missions, Ghost Owl said with some embarrassment. After New Era 937, the military service system on the Ark became non-compulsory. Only young people who have completed the entire compulsory education period in free educational institutions will be required to serve in the military. In addition, fresh graduates who are not physically qualified, are registered as relic hunters, and have already reserved a job while still in school are exempt from military service. Among the remaining teenagers entering the military camp, they are also divided into 2 types. One is the reserves, who only receive the most basic military training, only have temporary military status and no military rank. They are not usually issued weapons and equipment, but they also participate in the work of military industrial enterprises. It is a bit like half soldier, half worker. It is very similar to the military camps in the ancient Chinese farming system, except that they have changed from farming to working. This kind of reserves generally only need to be completed for 5 years. In the last 1 or 2 years, they will be assigned to some less important units to experience real military life, and then they will retire directly. When war breaks out and troops are urgently needed, these retired reservists are the first candidates to supplement the troops. As for the other type, regular service, they directly receive the most comprehensive and detailed military education and training, are fully armed, have their own military membership numbers and ranks, and will be assigned to various branches according to their grades and personal preferences after coming out of the recruit camp. Combat troops, unless they are disabled or have special reasons, must serve until they are 35 years old before they can retire. Regular service members can receive a one-time retirement compensation after retirement. In addition, the minimum living material guarantee for regular service members is 3 times that of civilians and reserve forces. In addition, some social benefits and priority recruitment qualifications for military cooperative enterprises. This is basically the above is all the benefits that a retired veteran can enjoy. P.S. I had a similar setting before I started the book, but I never had the chance to write it in, so I'll just add it here at the beginning. Hound once questioned Asano Akira as retired soldier because of his age. The status is because reservists do not have the benefits of retired soldiers after retiring, so they are generally not considered retired soldiers. Oh, reserve force, it's still a reserve force of the garrison. I don't know if that's normal. Hound curled his lips. He had never looked down upon officers and soldiers who came from the garrison. However, Ghost Owl, a former reserve, even served as a member of the garrison. He wasn't even a regular soldier, so he didn't bother to complain. Lao Chi, your mecha troops should often deal with living insect nests. Tell me how you do it. Okay. The living insect nest is actually a special biological phenomenon, and it does not really refer to the nest of some kind of insect creature. Chi Hanfan said. Ghost Owl, you should know the prehistoric species insect queen, right? Queen of worms. Is that the prehistoric species that floats in the low Earth orbit of star Alpha and launches meteorites to the ground from time to time? Apart from Kaz, there are only prehistoric species that are still alive in the low Earth orbit. There is a queen. Ghost Owl nodded. I heard that once our hunting group's exploration mission was cancelled because a meteorite launched by the Queen hit a traffic transfer point, and the entire affected area was blocked by the army. Have you never thought about why a prehistoric species that shoots meteorites is called the Queen of Insects? If it was just a meteorite, why would the army go to war and seal off the entire area? Chi Hanfen showed a helpless smile. The insect queen, could it be that what this insect queen launched onto the surface was not a meteorite, but the living insect nest you are talking about? You have some brains, the hound nodded. Those living insect nests are actually the excrement of the queen, or something similar to the placenta. Every once in a while, the reproductive organs in the queen's body will excrete the living insect nest is launched to the ground. Although this living insect nest has left the mother body, it is still active. After landing, it will drill into the ground, absorb all the nutrients that can be extracted, and hatch out the eggs wrapped in it. These insects, we call it the descendant of the insect queen. It is not a big threat in itself, but it can secrete strong acid and likes to gnaw metal. Therefore, most of the living insect nests are located on the Ark or at those large military bases. As for the Alpha civilization, the ruins, for some reason, have never been targeted by living insect nests. The vast majority of living insect nests will be destroyed by the fleet's artillery fire before they break through the atmosphere. Only less than 1/10 of the fish that slip through the net will fall to the ground. At this time, people like us are needed to clean up. Chi Hanfen continued, the living insect nest will burrow into the ground after it lands. We tried to blow it up with ground-penetrating bombs at first. The insect nest was indeed blown to pieces, but it was like blowing up a cesspit with firecrackers. Likewise, the eggs inside were splashing everywhere, and the furthest ones even appeared 30 kilometers away, eventually leading to the destruction of 6 transfer stations and a small military base. Later, after many improvements, we invented a method. After discovering the living insect nest, drill a hole in the insect nest and pour the seawater from Zhonghai directly into it. The seawater from Zhonghai is fatal to humans, and it is the same for living insect nests. One insect nest only needs to be filled with 5 to 20 tons of seawater can complete the killing. Then the things in this building can be ruled out as living insect nests. Right, Valentina interjected, this is all seawater, isn't that thing most afraid of seawater? Who knows whether a living insect nest will mutate? Its mother body is a prehistoric species that can survive in space, Hound said. If there is really a living insect nest inside, if you cut it with a knife, the insects will be sprayed out. The airs will eat you to the point of leaving no bones in an instant. After imagining that scene, Ghost Owl couldn't help but shudder. Check the outside of the building first. There shouldn't be a high chance that it's a living insect nest, Chi Hanfen suggested. Yeah, but you still have to be careful. To be honest, I hate dealing with living creatures, whether in ruins or in the wilderness, the Hound muttered with a flat mouth. The blasphemer Mecha was responsible for alerting the movement inside the building and the surrounding streets, while the 4 hounds walked around the building and finally climbed to the top of the building. At the top of this big chimney, there is a circular airtight door. The rusty valve is covered with seaweed. But what surprised the 4 people is, although this airtight door is intact, but there is no locking device. In other words, as long as they turn the rusty valve, they can open it directly. Hound and Chi Hanfen looked at each other, and the latter shook his head and said, I think it's better not to open it. But if you don't open it, you'll never know what's inside. Hound frowned, otherwise, let Ziona drive the Mecha over, with the muzzle facing the airtight door. If you open it, you'll find that it's really, if it's something bad, let's just close the door, and if we don't have time to close it, we'll give him a humming shot. What do you think? The risk is very high, but you can give it a try, Chi Hanfen said after hesitating for a few seconds. After all, along the way, this is the first intact building that has been found to have life reactions inside. Just this a little, and it's worth the risk. Zilajitu, help me. The Hound swam over and grabbed one side of the ring-shaped valve, while Zilajitu grabbed the other side. The Hound first tried to turn it slightly. The direction of rotation of the valve is the same as that of the soda bottle cap on the Ark. Counterclockwise is to loosen and clockwise is to tighten. the most important thing is that the mechanical structure of the valve is not the same. There is no rust, and it feels very smooth when turning. The hound does not even dare to use too much force for fear of accidentally turning his head and opening the door. Everything is ready, about to open. The hound gave Zwilligito a look, and then the two of them used force at the same time to turn the valve counterclockwise. Crunch, crunch. After 4 turns, the resistance of the mechanical structure had completely disappeared. The hound took a deep breath and tried to lift the valve half an inch. There was no obstruction. There was a slight gap at the edge of the entire airtight door, and no air bubbles came out of the door. This shows that the other side of the airtight door has also been filled with seawater. Hell, this building is obviously in good condition, and there is no damage anywhere. How could it be filled with water? Zwilligito raised his flashlight and shined it into the door. Did you see anything? Chi Hanfan asked anxiously. His voice kept low for fear of waking up something inside the door. It's empty, it's a compartment, it's not connected. Zwilligito raised his head and said to the others, there is a drainage cabin above. The life form detected by the blasphemer should be still on the next level. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen San. Chapter 950. This drainage tank should be specially used to let outsiders in. One thing is indeed true. This underwater city was built in the sea from the beginning, Chi Hanfan said. Do you want to go in? Ghost Owl took a deep breath and asked this question that he didn't want to ask. Come in, the hound said decisively, we are already so close. If the thing inside is conscious, it must have sensed us by now. It makes no sense that there is no reaction. Could they be luring us in deliberately? Chi Hanfan looked cautious. There might be a trap down there. Even if we know there is a trap below, we can only bravely rush in. The hound touched the holster on his waist. The time left is not enough for us to find another valuable clue, and, very soon it's possible that what we can find here are similar things. Instead of just picking a trap and jumping in hastily when the oxygen is exhausted, I would rather search this building first when I am well prepared. Although Hound's words were a bit convoluted, the others immediately understood what he meant. My thoughts are similar to those of an old dog. If we miss this place, we may not be able to find the next breakthrough, Zwilligito said. Then take a gamble. Chi Hanfan gritted his teeth. No matter how bad the situation is, it can't be worse than before. The 4 of them entered the drainage cabin, while Valentina and the blasphemer were responsible for the response and rescue outside. When the airtight door of the drainage cabin was closed again, the 4 of them could not help but feel an inexplicable chill running down their spines. Climbed up. Old dog, I seem to see you shaking. Chi Hanfan whispered. Fart, it's all in the dark, there's no light source at all. Which of your assholes saw me shaking? The hound immediately scolded. I'm shaking a hammer, will shaking help? There's no turning back when I shoot, and I don't regret it now used. The airtight door seemed to be of semi-automatic construction. After being closed, the valve above turned on its own, locking the 4 of them inside. Although Hound said he was not afraid, in fact, the moment the valve started turning, he almost called Valentina and asked her to use her mecha to forcefully break the airtight door. If someone with claustrophobia and deep-sea phobia came to a place like this, he would definitely be scared to death, Chi Hanfan joked casually. For people with that kind of problem, the submarine in their eyes is the same as the cockpit of a mecha in your eyes. It is basically equated with a coffin. Forget about this place, let them get into the deep submersible. I might as well kill them, Hound said, pulling out the flashlight hanging on his shoulder and turning on the light. The sudden light source made the 4 people relax a little. This place is just a normal drainage cabin, with square metal walls and floors. The indoor environment is very clean, and there are no complicated equipment. The strange and unsettling thing gives people the first impression of being in the cargo hold of an old empty ship. Speaking of which, how are we going to drain the seawater? I didn't see any place where we could operate it. The walls and floors are all tightly connected. Using the light of the flashlight, the ghost owl quickly scanned along the base of the wall. Lock up. Look for it, there should be something there, the hound said casually, squatted down, and started groping on the floor. The floor is very smooth. For tens of thousands of years, the highly corrosive sea water does not seem to have any impact on it. If it were an old-fashioned empty ship soaked on the seabed, it would probably be except for one in tens of thousands of years. Nothing will be left except the pitted frame. Could it be voice-controlled? Chi Hanfan suddenly asked. Oops, if it's voice control. Hound smacked his forehead. Things in the ruins of Alpha civilization must be activated in Alpha language, damn it, none of us know how to do this. In terms of Alpha language. Chi Hanfan turned to look at Ghost Owl. Does it only need to be Alpha language, and it can be anything specific? Then, just now Ghost Owl. Don't look at me, don't look at me, Ghost Owl waved his hands repeatedly. I can only vaguely understand the meaning of that whisper. If you hadn't told me the English version of that sentence, I wouldn't even know what it was saying. What, if you want me to read it out, I simply can't do it? Then what should we do? Chi Hanfan knocked on the floor with his finger. You can't use violence. Before the word force of violence could be said, a dark red light suddenly lit up in the water. This red light was not emitted by the equipment on the four of them, but like a piece of equipment that had been used by them before. The neglected light-emitting components floating in the water. The first reaction of the four people when they saw the red light was to quickly retreat and distance themselves from it. When the four of them clung to the inner wall of the drainage tank, they suddenly discovered that the red light was located exactly in the middle of the drainage tank. What is this? The hound couldn't help but ask. It's useless to ask me, I don't know. Chi Hanfan shook his head very simply, and added, the two of them will definitely not know. I didn't ask you. The hound stared at the red light. I was asking it. However, the red light did not give the hound a response. After flashing twice, it spread across the horizontal plane at a speed that could not be caught by the naked eye, turning into a circular halo. This circular halo swept the four people from head to toe, then flashed twice and then went out. Only some after-images of the red halo remained on the retinas of the four people, and these after-images were also it faded away in just a few seconds. Everything returns to the way it was before the red light was lit. What happened? The hound touched his body blankly, and found that no arms or legs were missing. Even the deep diving suit he was wearing was intact. It seems, scanning, Chi Hanfan said with some uncertainty, did that red light scan the four of us? Just when the four of them were in shock, a gap suddenly appeared on the ground that seemed to be one, and expanded rapidly. In the blink of an eye, a passage leading to the lower level appeared in front of the four of them. This, is it open now? Hound touched the back of his head in astonishment. The more I look at it, the more it feels like a trap. Chi Hanfan put his hand on the holster of his gun. Before the four people took any action, the water level in the drainage chamber began to drop rapidly, as if it was being sucked in by the passage opening, without leaving even a drop of water adhering to the ground. The four of them waited for a while and saw that nothing came out from below. Then they took a deep breath and bravely walked towards the entrance of the passage. But after just looking inside for a few times, they retracted their heads. There was a twist in the passage, and you could not see the scene on the next floor directly from the entrance of the passage. If you want to know what is on the next floor, you can only taking risks. If only we had a drone now, Hound sighed. Although drones are a standard tool for exploring ruins, they are not equipped on deep submersibles, for no other reason than that all current models of drones cannot withstand the water pressure of the seabed in the Middle Sea, plus the pressure of the seawater in the Middle Sea. Interference, the connection between the console and the drone will be lost at any distance. Rather than adding drone storage compartments that would affect the structural stability, it would be better to spend the budget on improving the detection capabilities of the deep submersible itself. the deep submersibles Hound and his crew are riding on were designed under this guiding ideology of "It would be great if Leighton was here," Chi Hanfan said. His robotic arm has 3 mini drones hidden in it, all of which are of the highest quality. "Well, it's meaningless to talk about this now. Let's take off the deep diving suit first," the Hound said as he unscrewed the airtight screws on the helmet and the shoulder and neck of the deep diving suit, and took off the heavy helmet. Down. Although this deep diving suit is considered lightweight, the weight of a single suit still reaches an astonishing 35 kilograms. In addition, in order to resist water pressure, the interlayer of the deep diving suit must be filled with semi-liquid to resist pressure. Liquid will cause the whole body weight to directly exceed 100 kilograms after wearing it, and movement will also cause serious obstacles to various joints of the body. Because of the buoyancy in the water, it may not feel too strenuous, but now that all the seawater in the drainage tank has been drained, it is simply difficult to move even in these deep diving suits. The 4 of them took off their deep diving suits with some difficulty and piled them in the corner. Chi Hanfan took one last look at these bulky equipment and said with some worry, "At the speed of water drainage just now, if seawater pours in again, we don't have time to put on the deep diving suit again." "You should say less." Hound rolled his eyes at Chi Hanfan. If this sentence was said by Leighton's crow's mouth, even if it takes several seconds to take a step, I would have to put this thing back on again. "I'll take the lead, and you guys will be responsible for the fire covers." Willajito took out a foldable hand shield from his backpack, unfolded it and fixed it on his left arm. His right hand was holding his usual combat weapon, axe, bowed his body and entered the passage. The other 3 followed him closely, holding guns and flashlights, aiming into the depths of the passage from both sides of the shield. Although it is a special ammunition for underwater pistols, due to the existence of crystal energy bombs, its power in dry environments cannot be underestimated. "The inside of this building looks much stronger than the ones that collapsed," Ghost Owl whispered. "Most of the buildings in the underwater city are made of metal frames and polymer walls, but the inside of this building it adopts an all-metal structure, completely abandoning the polymer material that will be corroded by seawater. This metal is not simple." Chi Hanfan, who is proficient in materials science, said as he touched the wall of the passage. "Looking at the luster and texture, it doesn't look like it is mixed with nano-alloy, but it can be soaked in seawater for so long without any signs of it appearing. There is only the slightest sign of corrosion or oxidation. Anyway, with the current level of human technology, it is impossible to smelt such an alloy." "Indeed," Ghost Owl nodded. "The skeletons of those collapsed buildings have also been corroded to a disgrace, but here, it looks like new." "Okay, everyone, keep quiet. We are about to reach the first corner." Hound interrupted the conversation between the 2, and at the same time put his right hand on Zwilligito's shoulder, signaling him to slow down. The 4 people's nerves became tense. They almost moved to the corner bit by bit against the wall on one side, and then took a big step laterally in one breath. "Saw it? This is the first and last corner of the passage. After the corner, the end of the passage suddenly becomes clear. Judging from the reflection of the flashlight light, it seems to be a huge space." The 4 of them couldn't help but quicken their pace, walked through the last section of the passage, and entered the hall. "Damn, this place doesn't look that big from the outside," Hound murmured. "The height and circumference of this hall are at least 10 times larger than the external outline of the building, but one thing is certain, the depth they just descended is not enough to enter the part below the ground. It's space technology." Chi Hanfan sighed. "It's the kind of space technology similar to that on Yagonactor. The internal space of this building is much larger than what we see outside. No wonder the life response detected by Liangina was blurry, and the space in the building was folded, so the information detected by the detector will naturally be interfered with. But no matter what, the life reaction does indeed exist, and it is here." Hound took a step back to back with Chi Hanfan. "When I think that there are living bodies besides us in this place, my back feels chilly." The maximum illumination angle of the flashlight was only 45 degrees, and it was not possible to scan the entire hall at once. But just when Ghost Owl opened his backpack and searched for a lighting rod, the entire hall suddenly lit up. Inductive lighting? Or, was the switch turned on by something? Chi Hanfen was stunned for a moment, but when he cast his sight into the distance, his spine instantly became straight and the hairs on his body stood on end. Stand up. Not only him, but the reactions of the other three were not much better, because what they saw was really shocking. That is an extremely huge brain. In other words, more than one brain. Countless biological organs similar in appearance to the human brain are connected together by pipelines to form a giant brain. This giant brain with a diameter of more than 50 meters is immersed in a transparent culture tank, and bubbles will appear from time to time. The inside of the giant brain emerged, slowly rose to the top of the culture tank, and was then sucked away by the ventilation device. It looked as if the giant brain was breathing. Core Mastermind. P.S. Thanks to Lonely Desolate Country for the 1,500 starting coins. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, and Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 951. This is, the core mastermind on the Ark. Chi Hanfen's eyes widened with shock on his face. Although none of them had actually come into contact with the legendary core master brain, Kaylan described the shape of the core master brain to the members of the hunting god hunting group, and it was exactly the same as the giant brain in the vat in front of them. Most of the residents on the Ark are aware of the existence of the core master brain, but in the imagination of most of them, the core master brain is an electronic computer that integrates the latest cutting-edge technology of mankind, a neatly arranged array of silicon crystal chips, intricate cables, and optical fibers, coupled with heavy heat dissipation and power supply devices. These elements are accumulated together to form the image of the core mastermind in the minds of most Ark residents. Only a very small number of people know that the core mastermind is actually a living thing. So, the reaction of life that Valentina saw outside, is actually this thing. A thoughtful look appeared on Zwilligito's face, but he did not put down his shield because of this, and his body remained alert posture. Chi Hanfen's breathing was still very rapid, but the hound behaved relatively calmly. He walked over and patted Chi Hanfen on the shoulder and said, "Actually, the main body of Ark's core mastermind was originally dug out of the Alpha ruins." What? The core mastermind of Ark was dug out from the ruins of Alpha civilization. Ghost Owl, as a well-informed old hunter, did not show much shock when he saw the giant brain in the tank. But when Chi Hanfen called out core mastermind, his expression became more exciting, and when the hound said, the core mastermind was actually dug out of the ruins of the Alpha civilization, his expression became peaceful. With Chi Hanfen is no different. This is impossible. Ghost Owl continued, shaking his head vigorously as he spoke. The core mastermind is the most important part of the Ark. It is the core control hub that existed when the Ark was built, as early as more than 900 years ago. It already exists. How could it be excavated from the ruins? The core mastermind in the interstellar drifting era did use 100% human civilization technology, but after landing on Alpha Planet, everything changed. Just like the alien technology discovered in the ruins was widely used by the residents of the Ark. Just like daily life, the core master brain has also undergone substantial transformation. Haven't you noticed that every time the core master brain is shut down for maintenance, the performance will be greatly improved? Hound explained. Well, even though I am a big boss, you can't feel this change, but in Ian's eyes, who often deal with computing and the internet, these changes are simply obvious. Kaylan told me that with human software and hardware technology, it's impossible to achieve that level of improvement. The hound paused and continued, since the hardware and software are not good enough, we can only rely on wetware. Wetware is a concept that has existed in the old era. It refers to the part of the computer system other than the software and hardware. It generally refers to the operator of the system, that is, standing in front of the screen and using a keyboard, mouse, or other input device. People. The word wet in wetware actually means organism. Today, when cyborg technology is extremely advanced, the meaning of wetware has naturally extended to the biological tissue that is loaded into the computer system. If human body modification is to install machinery into the human body, then wetware it's just the opposite. For example, if the cyborgization of a modified person is less than 50%, then it can be regarded as installing those artificial parts on the human body, and if the degree of transformation exceeds 50%, or even higher, it is actually equivalent to putting a person into a machine, and the modified human body parts can be regarded as wet parts of it. The living CPUs sealed inside mass-produced blasphemers are also a type of wetware. Concepts such as biocomputer and brain-computer interface that often appear in science fiction works can all be classified as wetware. But, if something as vital as the core mastermind uses the technology of the Alpha civilization, if something goes wrong, the consequences will be disastrous. Ghost Owl muttered. I don't know what those people from the Immortal crew are thinking. Maybe they have done corresponding experiments elsewhere. The hound curled his lips and spat on the ground. The spit had just hit the ground. A disc-shaped machine like a sweeping robot drove over from the corner, cleaning the contaminated floor until it was as bright as new in just a few seconds. Sure enough, this kind of computer room where biocomputers are placed has very high requirements for cleanliness. Chi Hanfan said. Humph, speaking of dirty things, we living people here are the ones who should be cleared out the most. I don't know what is going on in this brain, but there is no movement at all, the hound sneered. To be honest, I still have some doubts. Have you really seen the core mastermind of Ark? Ghost Owl couldn't help but asked again, if this is another mastermind, the one on Ark from which Ruins was the mastermind dug out. Ruins a -063 Ring City, Hound said in a deep voice. This is K. Ian's guess, but after hearing his reasons, I basically agree with his judgment. Ring City. Ghost Owl knows much more about the famous ruins on Alpha Planet than 33, especially this is an A-level ruins. After hearing the name, he quickly fell into deep thought. Middle. Compared to 33, who only knew a brief introduction to the ruins of the Ringed City, Ghost Owl knew even more than Kaylan. What's wrong? What do you know about that Ringed City? The hound noticed something was wrong on his face and immediately asked. Ring City, a team of hunters under me went there, and after they came back, Ark signed a confidentiality agreement with them. The hunting group headquarters also granted them a 6-month-long vacation, but as far as I know, things didn't go very well for these hunters afterwards, Ghost Owl recalled. Why is it not good? Tell me in detail. Hearing that Ghost Owl's people had been to the Ringed City, the hound immediately became interested. After all, the things under the Ringed City are likely to be the same as the tank in front of them now. Mesocerebrum, it's the same kind of thing. That was a team of 10 people. Not counting the 2 logistics personnel who were in charge of supporting outside the ruins, there were a total of 8 people who entered the Ring City. 2 of them were damaged inside the ruins, and only 6 of them returned to the Ark alive. Ghost Owl. He continued, when I first came back, I realized that something was not right with them, but I could see that they were trying their best to hide it and wanted to be as normal as possible. I also knew that Ark signed a contract with them. I signed a confidentiality agreement and the consequences of breach of contract are very serious, so I didn't ask any more questions and just asked the hunters from other teams to keep an eye on them and help me keep an eye on the 6 of them. And after 2 people took their share of the reward to the high-end commercial district of the South 4th District and spent wildly like they vented. This was nothing at first. Hunters often do this to relieve stress, especially those who have no family or relatives. A single hunter, but after they both spent all their money, they jumped directly from the tallest building in the South 4th District and fell into two blurry puddles of meat on the road. The behavior of the third man was similar to the two men, except that his way of venting his anger was visiting the red light district. After 3 days and 3 nights of madness, he cut the neck of the girl who was accompanying him on the bed, and then turned the tip of the knife, he stabbed it into his own mouth and went straight to his brain. The fourth man left the ark and disappeared into the wilderness. The fifth man kept himself shut up at home and never went out again. According to his neighbors, from the next day he acted like crazy and was alone. The man was talking to himself, sometimes wailing and sometimes laughing wildly. On the 6th day, there was suddenly no sound. There was no movement until the 9th day. The neighbor felt something was wrong and called the police. When the security department personnel pried open his residence, when I arrived, I discovered that he had committed suicide by taking the sedatives distributed by the hunting group. Logically speaking, the amount of this kind of medicine distributed is strictly controlled, and the amount that a single person can receive is not at all. It can cause death, and the shelf life of this medicine is very short, so it is impossible to save it. I also went to the crime scene at that time, and I found that the sedatives of several other people in the team were given to him, and the sedatives he took were for 6 people. Dose. When the ghost owl said this, he sighed, with a sad look on his face. These hunters who he personally trained have a good relationship with him, and the relationship between the two parties is also a teacher and a father. Seeing these juniors die unexpectedly, Ghost Owl does not feel comfortable at all. What about the last hunter? What happened to him? Is he also dead? Or is he like the fourth man, missing? Chi Hanfan asked. Although the fourth hunter is not dead, disappearing alone in the wilderness is actually not much different from death, unless he has contacted the exiles in a certain settlement in advance. The extreme environment in the wilderness alone, it is deadly enough to fight with indigenous creatures, let alone those exiles who hunt their own kind as prey. He's not dead, he joined a heretical section. Ghost Owl shook his head. I only saw him on the wanted list online, but with the subsequent numerous crackdowns, it's probably more likely to be a disaster. After that, I was full of curiosity about the things in the Ring City, but I never had the courage to explore it myself. I could only find ways to use money and connections to find out information about this ruins. I discovered that all the hunters who had been to that ruins had signed extremely strict confidentiality contracts with ARC. Not only that, these hunters ended up the same as them, either committing suicide, disappearing, or simply being admitted to a mental hospital. At first, I thought that this was a method used by ARC senior management to silence people. It wasn't until I managed to enter a mental hospital and was contacted by a former hunter who had returned from the Ring City that I realized the terrifying power of that ruins place. Kaylan once bought information related to the Ringed City from a powerful intelligence dealer. He said that there is a huge brain hidden underground in the Ringed City. Well, it's what we see now, floating in the tank. This thing inside. It's just that the giant brain under the Ring City seems to be out of control, has broken through the constraints of the culture vat, and is growing like cancer cells, almost filling the entire underground space. The Hound took a breath and continued, the ruins of the Ring City have never been closed to the outside world, but every hunter who enters must sign a confidentiality agreement. I don't know where the intelligence dealer got the information, but the man revealed a crucial piece of information to Kaylan. The mission of those hunters was actually very simple. They only needed to cut off some of the surviving brain cells, put them in a freezer and bring them to the ground. Get a handsome reward. So that's it. That crazy hunter kept saying that what he brought out was the demon's body tissue. Could this be what he was referring to? Ghost Owl murmured. Chi Hanfan on the side heard this and immediately frowned. But this kind of work can be completely done by machines, right? Letting the ruin hunters do it is not only inefficient, but also requires a lot of remuneration. Moreover, according to Ghost Owl's description, these relic hunters basically don't die well. It can be said that they use people as disposable consumables. If you want to talk about using cheap manpower to replace expensive machinery in some mines that are difficult to mine with machinery, it's understandable, but training a relic hunter is much more difficult than training a miner, right? Isn't this too wasteful? It's just like the bottomless sinkhole. Those hunting groups knew that letting people go down to mine stone tablets would make people crazy, but they still sent a large number of temporary workers and rookies. The hound was interrupted by the ghost owl in the middle of his words. No, it's different. I know about the bottomless sinkhole. It's true that the people who were sent to mine the stone tablets at that time were all newcomers, but the exploration requirements of the Ring City is very strict and is implemented in accordance with the standard A-level ruins. If a hunter with junior qualifications proposes to explore the Ring City, he will be directly rejected by the Ruins Exploration Association. If he explores privately, it is a felony. Damn, if I had known earlier, we should have gone to the Ringed City first. By the way, you have been in contact with the hunter who was imprisoned in a mental hospital. Did he say anything to you? The hound looked at the ghost owl, asked. What he said was very confusing, and the preface and the follower were inconsistent, but there was one sentence that he repeated many times. Ghost owl said, he said that those things are alive. This sentence was exchanged in just a few minutes. Here, he said it at least 20 times. Those things are alive. The hound touched the bridge of his nose. This sentence may seem crucial, but in fact it is of no use. We all know that the giant brain in this tank is alive, and the ARC official also requires them to do. The tissue cells that are brought out have to be in a living state. If they are dead, ARC probably won't pay, right? To be honest, old dog, what I'm most worried about now is whether we will follow in the footsteps of those ruin hunters. Chi Hanfan touched the hound's arm, looked at the giant brain in the tank and whispered, those hunters will suicide and going crazy are obviously related to things. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, and Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 952. No, the giant brain of the Ringed City is out of control. Its restraint device was destroyed by natural disasters like the ruins of the Ringed City, and the tissue cells grew uncontrollably, and in the tank in front of us the giant brain, I think, should still be under control. Hound said, maybe it is staring at us through some monitoring equipment now. You mean, this giant brain, is still functioning normally? Chi Hanfan's eyes jumped violently. Otherwise, what do you think the red light was? How did this hall light up? Who was controlling the cleaning robot just now? The hound took a deep breath and continued, I not only doubt the giant in the tank, but the brain is still functioning, and I even suspect that it is the core mastermind of the entire underwater city. Then we accidentally bumped into each other and happened to enter the core hub of the underwater city. Chi Hanfan was stunned for a moment. Isn't this good luck? It's so good that I have some doubts. Is it intentional? It brought us in. It's not an accident. We originally started searching from the central area of the undersea city. After searching so many places, only here there was a life reaction. The hound's voice suddenly paused, and then, his expression suddenly became extremely solemn. I smell that smell again, cried the hound softly. I also heard the whisper I heard in the deep diving cabin again. The ghost owl opened his eyes wide. The phrase leave the bed. The eyes of several people suddenly focused on Chi Hanfan. Chi Hanfan was stunned for a moment, and then hurriedly took out a pen and paper from his jacket pocket. What should I do? Chi Hanfan looked at the hound with questioning eyes. Close your eyes and just scribble a few words. Hurry, the hound urged, fearing that the revelation that finally appeared would slip away under his nose. Okay, I'll try. Chi Hanfan gritted his teeth, took a few deep breaths, then sat down cross-legged on the ground and closed his eyes. His hand holding the pen was shaking, and the pen tip slid away just as it touched the paper, poking a hole on the edge of the paper. Chi Hanfan acted like a primitive man who had never used a pen. Or a child who has just started to learn to draw. Lao Chi, don't be nervous, relax, you need to relax, understand, Hound said urgently. But Zwilligita grabbed him, shook his head silently at him, and motioned the Hound to look at the piece of paper spread on the ground. The lines drawn by Chi Hanfan seem messy, but in fact they form a standard English letter, Y on the paper. What he is writing, is in English, Hound said in astonishment. Is this the content of a revelation? Zwilligita nodded and told the Hound to be silent with his eyes. The second character drawn by Chi Hanfan is also an English letter. It is a big O, and the circle is drawn almost close to the edge of the paper. This O is the same as the previous Y, dividing the entire paper. Filled to the brim. Each letter is covered on top of the previous one. If he hadn't been watching Chi Hanfan right from beginning to end, I'm afraid the final result would just be a graffiti with countless messy lines stacked on top of each other. Y, O, U. The Hound read the letters one by one. What comes together at the end is a very simple sentence. Are you humans from Earth? Still, you are humans from Earth. Since there is no punctuation mark at the end of the sentence, no one knows whether it is a statement or a question. Are you talking to us? The Hound looked at Zwilligita in shock, then turned his head suddenly and looked at the giant brain soaked in the culture vat. Do you think the one we're talking to? Ghost Owl pointed at the giant brain. Is that it? Tower of Babel, Shangcheng District, Jungle Hunting Ground. Kailan didn't use the holy word. It wasn't that he didn't want to use it, but that he couldn't use it at all. Real battles are not like those in cartoons. When the protagonist magnifies his move, everything around him will stop in time, and the villain will just watch the protagonist complete the chant. In reality, if you want to fight in close combat, to release this ultimate move that requires reciting a spell, Kailan can only ruthlessly interrupt the spell again and again. It's not that he didn't try to recite the holy word in a time-stop state. Last time at the ruins of the ancient bronze city, another self could use the holy word in a time-stop state. However, when Kailan planned to copy the other party's operation, he failed. The situation was completely different. Although in the time-stop state, Ian's thinking is completely unaffected, but as soon as he starts reciting the holy words, the time stop will be forcibly ended. When he tried it for the first time, Kailan was completely unprepared and caught off guard. He was directly hit by the Sphinx, and most of his body was torn to pieces. If he hadn't used his living armor to condense a huge airbag in time to separate himself from the Sphinx, I'm afraid not even that small half of the body can be left. Kailan can no longer feel his limbs and torso. Except for his chest and head, other parts of his body have been replaced by living armor. This level of trauma, even with Kailan, Ian's recovery ability will also take several days to fully recover. Kailan has no intention of restoring his limbs. Anyway, the new limbs will soon be destroyed by the other party, not to mention that these limbs are not as strong or powerful as the living armor. If it were not for the living armor, it would not be able to compete with Ian's senses. If the nerves are connected, Kailan even plans to replace everything except the brain with living armor. Just like that kind of cyborg monster that has been transformed so that only one of its original brains is left, but even so, Ian's decline is simply irreversible. The growth rate of living armor is not unlimited. Under such high-intensity combat, the consumption rate of living armor is extremely exaggerated, and the reserve in Ian's body has gradually become stretched. Not to mention anything else, just his legs could originally use living armor to condense the shape of human legs, and could even perfectly simulate muscles, bones and blood vessels. But now, Kailan only uses mechanical spring legs that require the least materials. The shape of this kind of spring leg is like the sports prosthetic limbs often seen at the disabled games in the old era. This is a forced choice. No matter how good the performance of the sports prostheses is, it is a simple mechanical structure after all, which is different from human legs. It's incomparable, let alone those complicated cyborg prosthetics. But Kaylan had no choice. He couldn't even condense the living armor used as an attack weapon. The depths of his body seemed to be hollowed out. Moreover, when Kaylan used his mind to activate the living armor, the brain will also feel bursts of needle-like pain. This pain inexplicably made Kaylan feel another feeling: hungry. Yes, it's hunger. Although his gastrointestinal system no longer existed, and only a small part of his esophagus was left, he felt an unprecedented hunger. The desire to eat was so urgent, even if there was a live animal in front of him. Kaylan felt that he could only chew the bones of the thunder beast. It's not that he hasn't thought about eating the Sphinx, but every time the living armor tears off a piece of flesh and blood from the Sphinx's body, the separated piece of flesh and blood will quickly become inactive, even if it is eaten, and cannot provide any material or energy at all, let alone fill the hungry gully. Unless he could swallow the Sphinx whole. It's still getting worse. Kaylan couldn't help but couldn't condense new living armor. Even the original living armor was accelerating degradation. Many small holes had appeared on the surface of the streamlined version of the sports prosthetics, as if they were eaten by insects. It is like ordinary wooden furniture. Through these holes, you can see that the inside of the prosthetic limb is completely hollow. Crack. Finally, when he landed after a back jump, the overloaded sports prosthesis broke directly. Kaylan lost his balance and fell heavily to the ground. Naturally, the Sphinx would not miss such a good opportunity, and immediately pounced on Kaylan, who was on the ground with both claws. Let alone dodge, Kaylan can't even get up from the ground now. He can only remove the living armor that makes up the torso and limbs, and condense the last shield he can muster on the front of his body. Under the arc-shaped blood-colored shield, a broken human pig lay there. The human pig's face had been shattered, revealing the bright red flesh and white bones underneath, and its two eyeballs were missing. The only one left was covered with bloodshot eyes and extremely swollen. The Sphinx's attacks hit the shield one after another, and cracks gradually began to appear in the shield, which expanded rapidly. The Sphinx seemed to know that Kaylan had no power to fight back, and he only needed to break the shield. Kill the target, so it did not choose other moves, but poured all its power on the shield, on Kaylan, the last barrier. The trump card: there will be a day when it becomes empty. Kaylan, who was lying on the ground, tried to recite the holy word for the last time, but the holy word was extremely draining of mental energy. Now that his consciousness was starting to fade, how could he recite even half a word? Come. I didn't expect to die in this way, it's so frustrating. All kinds of messy pictures flashed through Kaylan's mind. He had heard in many places that when a person is about to die, an environment similar to a revolving door will appear, and the scenes he has experienced in his life will appear one after another, appearing in front of his eyes. But the problem is that the picture flashing through Kaylan's mind makes him feel extremely strange, as if it is not his life at all. Bang! A huge bell rang suddenly. For a moment, Kaylan thought that his semi-dissociated consciousness was going to be shaken away, but when he calmed down, he found that his mental state was actually worse than just got a lot better. What's going on, you? Who are you? He clearly felt that another consciousness entered his mind. Do you know why living things continue to evolve? That consciousness did not answer Kaylan's question, but asked him a question. 2. Become more perfect. No, the reason why living things evolve is to survive, the consciousness said. To survive is the most primitive instinct of all life forms. The reason why life is called life is because living itself is the meaning of life. You, what on earth do you want to tell me? My remaining time may not be much. Kaylan originally wanted to say that his remaining time was running out, but he unexpectedly discovered that the world had fallen into stagnation. With Kaylan's mental power, he stopped when he couldn't activate it. This obviously didn't come from his own power. Is it Ze-Luo? Kaylan tried to call Ze-Luo, but there was still no reply. He couldn't help but think of the other self at the ruins of the ancient bronze city, but he also knew very well that that consciousness no longer existed, and he clearly felt the other person's demise. If the conscious body can be called life, then the other self is already too dead to die. As the carrier of the blood of God, that consciousness has been completely burned out, not even ashes are left. As long as you are working hard to live, everything you do to survive is moving closer to the ultimate evolution of life. The consciousness added, a strong enough will to survive can break through all shackles, including time and space. Are you kidding? If you don't have to die, if you don't want to die, then I'm afraid humans can really live forever. That's because human willpower is not strong enough to change the rules of the universe. However, humans have begun to make attempts in this area, and Asano Akira is one of the results of this attempt. Then if I don't want to die now, can you keep me from dying? I can't, but you can. The ability of infinite rebirth like the phoenix is not true immortality, it is just the resurrection of the body, but consciousness is eternal. The consciousness paused for a moment and then said, you are closer to that existence than the phoenix, you are a more perfect life form than it, but you are not complete now. As soon as he finished speaking, a body wrapped in a white robe suddenly appeared in front of the Sphinx. Kaylan recognized it immediately. This was the body called Joker stored in the black coffin. As long as your will is strong enough, you can control the power, control this part of the separated power, that consciousness said to Kaylan. P.S. Thanks to attacking cavalry for the 1,500 starting coins, thanks to water for the 100 starting coins. P.P.S. Something seems not right. After the single-tube nucleic acid test that day, my family entered a state of seclusion except for my dad going out to buy groceries. I didn't go out as a result. My mom still had a fever today, 38.4 degrees Celsius, and there was also a fever. We have symptoms of fatigue and cough except for a dry and itchy throat and a foreign body sensation. My dad and I don't have any symptoms yet, considering that the appointment with the dentist has been cancelled. There is no point in going out to do nucleic acid tests, and the antigen reagents are no longer available. If you can't buy it, just optimize the process and fast forward to isolate at home and take cold medicine. You can rest assured that I will not stop updating unless there is serious discomfort. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chenmi-san. Chapter 953. Separation. Kaylan seemed to have vaguely guessed something. Could it be that he was the other half who came out of the white coffin? The Immortal crew has always been vague about K-Ian's origins, but now it seems that the so-called symbiote is probably just a half-truth and a half-false cover. You have to use your will to control the power, and don't let the power devour your will, but the human will is too weak, and almost no one can withstand this kind of power, so we can only separate the body and soul, and put part of it into the black, the other part releases the white coffin. The consciousness told Kaylan, the black coffin and the white coffin are the highest masterpieces of Alpha civilization technology. They analyzed the original composition of God to create this item came out. It is not an inferior imitation, nor is it a way to strengthen the individual itself by stealing the power of God. This is a path that represents the possibility of human beings. Unfortunately, in the Alpha civilization, after completing this masterpiece, they ran out of time to verify the path. So, the undead crew will be completing the unfinished business of Alpha civilization, Kaylan asked. This is an attempt, but it turns out that there is still a huge gap between the expected goal. The body that the Immortal coffin can create is not perfect. What's more, even after the two bodies are fused, the consciousness is still incomplete. There was a hint of helplessness in the tone of that consciousness, that existence is really too powerful, and only in this way can we hide it from his perception, but because of this, the coffin of eternal life has never been able to break through that upper limit. I roughly understand what it means, just like gaining knowledge and power through erosion. If the degree of erosion is too low, the less you can get. If you want to become stronger, you have to risk super erosion. The risk, right? Yes, the other party answered in the affirmative. I have another question. Who are you? Why do you appear in my brain and tell me these things? I am just a fragment of sealed memory, but you have never been able to feel my existence. It was not until I was awakened by your will to survive that I was near death, and I was able to have a conversation with you. You didn't wake me up. Not only this fragment of memory, but also successfully resonated with the other half of the deified body in the black coffin. The other half of the deified body refers to Joker? Then the power that stops time and space also comes from it. I am just a fragment of memory. I do not have any power myself. I can only provide you with the information I have within a limited scope and guide you, although according to the planned process, this day has been moved forward a lot, but there were no major problems in the whole process, and your willpower has reached a level that is strong enough to carry that kind of power. However, the consciousness that existed in the memory suddenly changed the topic. The two deified bodies are fused together, and their abilities are very close to the critical value. You must use this kind of power with caution. If it attracts his attention, even if the power of the deified body is amplified hundreds of millions of times, it will not escape the end of destruction. How to judge the critical value? Is it the same as the degree of erosion? Kaylan wanted to ask something else, but the consciousness disappeared completely in his mind like a formatted program. However, the time stop did not end with the disappearance of that consciousness. The body called Joker has also been suspended in mid-air. Use your will to control power. What does power refer to? Kaylan looked at Joker. The next second, this body had turned into a huge droplet, and K-Ian's the remaining body was wrapped in it. First the heart, then the large blood vessels connected to the heart, then the bones, muscles, and internal organs. K-Ian's body returned to its original state in the blink of an eye. No, to be precise, stronger than before, much stronger. But he also deeply understood why that consciousness reminded him not to let his will be swallowed up by power. In the process of reshaping the body, countless messy thoughts entered K-Ian's mind, which did not belong to Kaylan at all. The memory made him feel familiar and strange at the same time, as if he had really experienced those lives. If he cannot break through these distracting thoughts, K-Ian's self-awareness will be completely lost in it and become a zombie-like puppet. Fortunately, Kaylan had made preparations in advance. If these distracting thoughts were compared to a raging torrent, then his self-awareness was like a boulder that remained motionless in the middle of the river. No matter how much the water beat and polished it, it did not waver at all. On the contrary, he used his body to forcefully divide the huge torrent of consciousness into two smaller tributaries. Does this mean the fusion is successful? When all those chaotic memories and distracting thoughts faded away like a tide, Kaylan felt like he was reborn. He could clearly feel the strong and powerful heart in his chest constantly beating, pumping blood powerfully to the blood vessels throughout the body. Every muscle and every bone is full of surging power. Kaylan even has the illusion that he can jump out of the atmosphere with a single jump. When reshaping his body, he can choose his own body structure. Among those chaotic memory fragments, there are also fragments belonging to extra human beings. If he is affected by those things, the final condensed body is likely to be something like a monster, like a corpse. Fortunately, Kaylan always firmly believed that he was a human being and not something else, so he was not affected by those influences, although even he was not sure whether those influences could be considered positive or negative. Human skin is soft and fragile, far inferior to the common carapace-like cuticles or even exoskeletons found in indigenous creatures. The fingernails covering the ends of the fingers and the teeth made for chewing cannot be used as sharp weapons in battle like the claws of wild beasts. To use, if he wants to become stronger, Kaylan has countless choices. Any choice will give him more power than his current state. But Kaylan knew very well that if he really made such a choice for the ultimate power, then, as the consciousness said, the will be swallowed up by the power. Those chaotic, even inhuman things, the memory of the creature will also take over K-Ian's personality, completely transforming him into a monster from the inside out. Using one's own will to control power, that's what it means, right? Kaylan glanced at the Sphinx, who was still in a frozen state, and waved his hand gently, and the black and white world instantly returned to color, and time it also began to flow. The Sphinx's claws just broke through the shield formed by the living armor and penetrated straight down. It's just that Kaylan was no longer under the shield. When the Sphinx realized that his target had ducked behind him, Kaylan directly stretched out his hand to him, and then made a fist-clenching motion. Click. A crisp sound resounded inside the Sphinx's body, and the monster's movements suddenly froze. The next moment, its chest collapsed completely, turning into a ball with a diameter of not even 1 centimeter. Spherical things. Is it ZE Logo's space power? No. It's stronger than ZE Logo's power, and it's easier to use, and it's completely unrestricted. Kaylan just thought about the fact that the Sphinx was crushed. It looked like the monster that had forced him into a desperate situation more than 10 seconds ago had immediately turned into the same thin fleshy membrane. When Kaylan gave up this idea, the extremely compressed flesh membrane could no longer support the internal strength and exploded, creating a huge rain of blood in the forest. The black coffin, why does the power of the black coffin appear here? Nieto shouted in a sharp voice, who sent the deified body that represents power here? Who is it? I know what you are. Nieto suddenly changed the subject. Hundreds of drones rose from the forest, and countless weapons of various shapes were aimed at Kaylan from the air. You are the one who is the new personality nurtured by the white coffin. I understand. That guy called the Fool, he can't trust anyone, the only person he can trust is himself, and he puts everyone together, including those members who also belong to the immortal crew. He actually tried to blaspheme the gods with his mortal power. The Fool. Kaylan recited the code name silently. Although many things were still speculation, he could roughly grasp the context of the whole matter. He is a fool, but he is not a fool. This body is more like a container that can be replaced at any time, and what the container carries is the self-awareness that can remain awake under the impact of the torrent of power. As for this self-awareness, it should come from the Fool. Damn it, the clown is actually me. One of the free translations of Joker is clown. Kaylan never expected that this meme, which is often used to ridicule and self-deprecating on the internet, would actually become a reality for him. But, what was the purpose of the self who once did this? He clearly didn't trust anyone, yet he disappeared for so many years, leaving the Ark and the undead crew to be managed by those he didn't trust. Wasn't he afraid that those people would ruin his plan? Is there another agenda, or is it forced? So, those memory fragments sealed deep in the mind actually have little to do with that stone tablet. They actually belong to the memories of the Fool himself. Sealing memories, split personality, coffin of immortality, maintaining the status quo, eroding, the critical point. A flash of light suddenly flashed in his mind. Fortunately, Kaylan did not miss this flash of light this time, and he quickly realized the crux of the problem. The true bodies of all members of the immortal crew are sealed in the coffin of immortality, not only for physical immortality, but also to restrain their own erosion. As the highest ruling class of Ark, they are exposed to forbidden knowledge is much more than others. The coffin of eternal life is not omnipotent. It can only inhibit the deepening of erosion to a certain extent. Judging from the currently known information, the so-called erosion is completely irreversible. The previous Pope Chiron, it was because the degree of erosion exceeded the critical value that it turned into a monster like a mountain of flesh. Chiron's will is far less firm than Choron's. There is an indelible desire in his heart. In hindsight, it is said that it was this desire that led him astray and ultimately led him to destruction. Kaylan probably already knows what desire dominates Chiron's heart. Curiosity. He is eager to know more things. He is eager to pry into the hearts of others. Super eclipse can be regarded as it is a means of granting a wish, but the price that the wisher needs to pay is really too high. The Phoenix ability should deal with the immortality of the body. The gluttony mentioned by Nieto is desires such as appetite. These desires are not pure enough, so they are easily mixed with impurities. Only the most original desire of living can keep one's self-awareness clear under impact. This was already verified by Kaylan personally when he merged with Joker just now. As for the fool, he must know more forbidden knowledge than Chiron. Perhaps, the fool was already in a state of corrosion before Chiron broke through the critical point. Erosion is irreversible, but there is a way to deceive God. First abandon the severely alienated body, and then split the personality into multiple individuals. Each individual only carries a part of the safety threshold information. For the sake of insurance, seal this information with special means. Finally, find a body for each personality as a container. In this way, the original human being whose erosion level has exceeded the critical point has turned into 2, 3, or even more amnesia clones through this operation. If you want to deceive him, you must first deceive yourself. How can you convince God to believe a lie that you don't even believe? P.S. Thanks to book friend 20200430003515006 for the 1500 starting coins. PPS Today's symptoms are more obvious than yesterday. The main ones are a dry and itchy throat, a slight cough and a headache. The fatigue, high fever and taste degradation that everyone on the internet mentioned did not appear in me. I don't know if it is due to individual differences or not until then. In fact, I'm not even sure if I'm really infected anyway, whether it's a yang or a common cold. I just take medicine at home, it doesn't make any difference. I'm not in a good state. The last few chapters I've written may be a bit confusing. There are typos, grammatical problems, and stuff like that. Please be patient with me. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 954. Just as Kaylan was thinking, he found that his body gradually began to disintegrate. His originally fair skin seemed to have been scorched, turning black and hard, and finally turned into flying ashes. Vaguely, he seemed to feel a wave of her eyes fell on him. Critical point. The power after fusion with Joker has exceeded that critical point, so much so that it attracted his attention. What to do? In an instant, countless thoughts flashed through Ian's mind, but in the end he took no action and allowed his body to completely turn into ashes. Luo, who was left in a deep sleep state, fell to the ground with a muffled sound. The line of sight disappeared, and the ashes gradually gathered again, forming the appearance of Kaylan. This disintegration phenomenon is not his power, but the body's means of self-protection. In a sense, it can be understood as pretending to be dead. But Kaylan also knows very well that if you pretend to be dead too many times, you may not be able to deceive that existence. Although the power of Joker is powerful, every time it is used, it is like gambling. I bet his gaze just glanced over and didn't stay for a moment longer. Undersea City, inside the core hub. Are you talking to us? The Hound straightened his back and asked loudly to the giant brain in the tank. Y-E-S. Chi Hanfan, with his eyes closed, wrote 3 more letters on the paper. For the convenience of everyone's reading, all subsequent conversations will be converted into Chinese. Do you know the Earth? Zwilajito couldn't help but ask. I know the other party's answer was simple, but also very direct. Don't ask these useless questions first. The Hound thought for a moment, and then asked, why did you bring us here? Do you want to use us to do something for you? I didn't bring you here, you found it here on your own, the giant brain in the tank replied. However, I do have something I want you to do. Then why were we separated from Yagonactor? And what about those monsters we encountered in the sea? Can you give us a reasonable explanation? If we can't establish the most basic trust between us, what will happen to us? I won't do anything for you. Yagonactor cannot enter the sea area. As for the monster you encountered, it is the number 93 Epsilon level mutant. This mutant is not very aggressive and will not cause any harm to you. It won't cause any harm to us. The hound's voice suddenly rose several times. You're farting. It's just curious about strange things. You can recall whether it has ever taken the initiative towards you. Ah. The hound was speechless immediately, while Zwilligito patted his shoulder and whispered, it was indeed us who struck first. Even so, the monster did not fight back. To be honest, I've always had this feeling when I was fighting with it before. With its speed, it could clearly entangle the deep submersible directly, but it always kept a vague distance. It seemed like it was really just observing us. It seems, that's what happened, Ghost Owl also said. The damage to the deep submersible was actually caused by the torpedo we detonated ourselves. Are you two on my side or on the opposite side? Why are you just talking to that idiot? The hound glared at the two angrily. It's just stating the facts, Zwilligito sighed. At least so far, this thing is telling the truth. Okay, I won't pursue this matter for now. First, you have to tell us, who are you? The manager of Hive City number 451, the super biological computer, codenamed Christine, the giant brain in the tank, replied, the Alpha civilization brought me here from the destroyed Hive City, as the undersea the city's control center. Christine, isn't this an English name? Or, is it something like a new name after translation? Hound struggled a little on this small issue, and then asked, the existence of this undersea city, what is the purpose? If you can tell us this, we will believe you for once. Oh, by the way, there is also the fusion body in the Abyss hatchery, its origin and activity habits, we also need to know this. Isn't this a little too greedy? Ghost Owl whispered into the ear of the hound, what if this thing is annoyed? We are still on its territory. I can't even figure out the origin of that monster. How can I believe it? But the giant brain in the tank, or rather, Christine did not refuse the hound's question. Chi Hanfan just paused for a moment, then continued to hold the pen and wrote on the paper. This underwater city is actually a biological weapons research institute. The fusion body in the Abyss hatchery you mentioned is one of the main research projects of this research institute. As for its activity habits, it has never taken the initiative to leave the Abyss hatchery, because the hatchery is equipped with an induction device, and every once in a while, creatures that stray into the sea area will be led to the Abyss for the fusion body to prey on and extract gene fragments. That induction device, will humans be affected too? Yes, the signal released by the induction device can affect human brain waves, causing humans to yearn for the Abyss hatchery without them realizing it. This yearning is difficult to resist, and the people who are attracted, generally everyone, will think that this is their true inner thoughts, rather than inducements from the outside world. The hound and Zwilligito looked at each other, feeling a sense of fear in their hearts. If they approached the Abyss hatchery before finding Christine, they might also be attracted by the induction device. Looking back, Ian's decision to break into the Abyss hatchery was probably not just to find flesh-eating worms. This induction device must also have played an important role secretly. Hound glanced at the paper that Chi Hanfan pressed with the edge of his palm. Hundreds of letters were already overlapped on the paper, and the handwriting in many places had penetrated the back of the paper. Hound silently changed it for him. She put out a piece of paper, and then said to Christine, last question, this is really the last question, what does the phrase leave the bed mean? Christine was not impatient with the hound's backbiting, but she did not answer the question directly. This question involves the most fundamental secrets, and I cannot explain it to you with my authority. Otherwise, the self-destruct system will determine betray for me and start on your own. Okay. You can tell me, what do you want us to do? This person should be familiar to you. As soon as Chi Hanfan finished writing the sentence, a holographic shadow was suddenly projected in front of the breeding tank. Inside the shadow was a blood-red figure fighting with an extremely exaggerated monster. Although most parts of the figure's body were covered in blood-red armor, the Hound recognized it immediately: Kaylan. He is currently inside Nest City number 97, which is an abandoned Nest City. However, due to the influence of the residual power of the Great God, Alpha Civilization's many exploration operations in this Nest City ended in failure. Where is this number 97 nest? Tell me, the Hound immediately asked urgently. It's underground in this underwater city. As soon as these words came out, Hound and the others fell into a brief silence. You mean, Kaylan, he is under our feet now? The Hound frowned and shook his head to himself. It's impossible, he should still be in the grey mist forest, in that place. In the tower in the central area of the forest. How could he be under the sea? I'm just telling you the truth. Okay, then what is the purpose of doing this? Do you want us to rescue him? When did the artificial intelligence of Alpha Civilization become so kind? Hound asked suspiciously. He is a very special individual. The unfinished business of Alpha Civilization has the possibility of continuation in him. As one of the instructions written in my source code, I must ensure the safety of this individual. Then why don't you save him yourself? Hive number 97 is affected by the residual power of the Great God. No Alpha person or technological creation of the Alpha Civilization can enter there, only you humans can, because you have not been affected by him yet. Gaze. The Hound exhaled 2 breaths in succession, and then said in as calm a tone as possible, It's not impossible to ask us to help you rescue people, but this abandoned Nest City is full of people at first sight. Danger, if you want us to succeed, then you should tell us everything you know about Hive number 97. Is this reasonable? Reasonable, Kristen responded. The structure of the hives on Alpha is roughly the same, divided into 4 parts, the bottom hive, the lower city, the upper city and the cloud top, but the order is exactly opposite to what you know. The bottom nest is located at the top of the hive city and is also a barrier to enter the hive city, while the cloud top is located at the bottom of the hive city. Chi Hanfan's body was trembling continuously. It was obvious that the high-intensity revelation had caused an unbearable burden on his body, but he still wrote letters one after another on the paper without saying a word. On the contrary, it was the Hound who was the first to see Chi Hanfan's abnormality. Thinking that the illusion magnetic field would drive people crazy, he immediately pressed Chi Hanfan's shoulders to stop him from continuing to write, and then shouted to Kristen said, Since you can use the projection screen to tell us that Kaylan is in the Lashiza nest, then why can't you show us the structural diagram of the nest? Do you want to kill Lao Chi? Chi Hanfan let out a groan, then forcibly broke away from the Hound's hand, and wrote, Hive City number 97 has received serious erosion. If the real scene of the Hive City is projected, the degree of erosion for all of you will be breaking through the critical point in an instant. Then you can't express it in words. Just like what you are doing now, controlling Lao Chi. I don't understand the words and languages of your Earth civilization. If I need to learn, I may directly destroy the brain of one of you. I can guarantee that I will try to keep the side effects to a minimum. Damn it, the Hound couldn't help but cursed. Old dog, it's okay, I can still hold on, whether it's 4 people or 1 person, you should know better than me which side to bet on this deal, right? Hum. Hound stomped his feet angrily. You old boy, don't die here, otherwise I don't know how to explain to Ziona. Don't worry, my life is very tough and I can't die. After the brief interlude, Christine continued to manipulate Chi Hanfan to write on the paper, the bottom nest is equivalent to the slum in your understanding, and the lower city is the industrial area, which is responsible for the entire nest. Most of the industrial needs are there. The danger level of these 2 levels is almost 0, but in the upper city, his remaining power is very terrifying. Remember, never look up at the dome directly above, even if it is reflection or refraction, or even pictures and scenes captured with electronic equipment. Kristen continued. Can't look at the dome, is it something similar to a meme? Hound muttered in a low voice. He still has vivid memories of that extremely weird meme infection time. If it weren't for K-Ian's force to exist, I am afraid that all mankind will abandon ships and flee now. By the way, what about henteing? Why don't you continue talking? I know nothing about the situation in henteing, Christine said honestly. More than 90% of the remaining power of the great gods is concentrated in henteing. I can't even pry into that place. Tisk. Hound smacked his lips. Then where is this guy Kaylan now? Upper City, the jungle hunting ground in the central area. He is currently encountering the strongest mutant in the abandoned nest and is caught in a bitter battle. No matter whether he wins or loses this battle, he cannot escape the fate of death. So, you must stop him. Christine's words are not difficult to understand. If he is killed by a monster, it goes without saying. But if Kaylan kills the monster, then based on his character, he will probably go directly to Yunding, 90% of gods, the remnants of power. The Hound did not want to think about the concept, and did not dare to think about it. P.S. I suddenly had a high fever in the middle of the night last night, 38 degrees 9, I was shaking all over and had joint pain. I took an antipyretic pill and went to sleep. However, when I woke up the next morning, it went up to 39 degrees 6, I probably could. Is it really Yang? Because I am worried that the symptoms will be more serious tomorrow, I still have to endure the high fever today. If I really can't bear it tomorrow, I will ask for leave. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chenmi-san. Chapter 956. Except Kaylan, where are the others? Do you know where they are now? Hound asked again. Although Kaylan told him that except for 33 and Zeelo, everyone else had separated from him before entering the Tower of Babel, but since Valentina will appear in this water area, maybe ye both Fan and Asano Akira were teleported to this place. To this question, Kristen's answer was unknown. Okay, I won't waste any more words with you. Where is the entrance to Hive City number 97 you mentioned? Before Hound finished speaking, a three-dimensional projection of the underwater city appeared in front of everyone's eyes. A bright spot of light was marked among the ruins. In addition, I can also provide you with some support. As soon as Chi Hanfan finished writing the sentence, the wall on one side lowered into the ground, revealing what was behind the wall. There were more than a dozen equipment racks, and the things hung on them included hot weapons such as firearms and small artillery, as well as cold weapons such as swords, guns, swords, and halberds, and even a complete set of armor, from the joint structure to the hanging behind the back. Judging from the energy backpacks carried, these armors should all be powered armors, but compared to the powered armors on the Ark, the style of these armors is closer to the ancient armors of the old era, and there are even gorgeous gilt patterns on the armor plates. Pattern. What surprised Hound and others the most was that whether it was weapons or armor, the size of these equipment actually fit the human body shape, and they would not feel awkward at all when used. It's strange, isn't it, said that the height and shape of the alphas are 1.5 to 2 times that of humans? Why do I feel like their armor is just the right size for humans to wear? Ghost Owl stepped forward and gestured. After a while, he asked with some doubts. These equipment are not left over from the Alpha civilization, but from the Hive civilization of an earlier period, Christine replied. Hive civilization, the Hound was startled. The Hive cities you just mentioned, including the place we are going to next, were they not built by the Alpha civilization? No. Hiss, I seem to understand something. The Hound looked at Zwilligitu. Do you still remember the mysterious writing we found on the Nino alloy scraps during our mission in the molten mine area? Kaylan said it wasn't Alpha text. Remember? Zwilligitu nodded, combined with the origin of Nino alloy, that, Christian, Yagonak Toll, was also built by this Hive civilization. Yes. Kristen's answers began to become brief, not because her patience was exhausted, but because Chi Hanfan, as an information carrier, was reaching his limit. Thick, dark red blood hung from his nostrils, dripping on the paper drop by drop. The veins on his face and hands protruded, and his clenched teeth made a rattling sound. Pencils made of wood's high-density polymer were slightly deformed when he pinched them. "Stop! I tell you to stop immediately," the hound roared at Christine. I saw Chi Hanfan's body trembling violently for a few times as if he was electrocuted, and then he slumped softly. The hound rushed forward to support him and check his condition immediately. Chi Hanfan's pulse and heartbeat were relatively stable. Not only was the skin on his body not hot, but it also felt unusually cold. His eyes were closed tightly and his lips were moving slightly, as if he had something to tell the hound. "Hello? Lao Chi? Lao Chi? Can you hear my voice?" The hound put his ears up and patted Chi Hanfan on the back. Stop shooting, cough, I'm not dead, I was swatted to death by you." The two big men almost put their faces together, and the hound could clearly hear Chi Hanfan's words. "Don't let anything happen to you, bastard. If something happens to you, Na will have to step over his head with her mecha," Hound yelled. "I can't die, I'm just very sleepy and tired, my head is buzzing," Chi Hanfan said intermittently. If Kailan were here, he would be able to tell at a glance that Chi Hanfan's current symptoms are caused by mental overdraft. Although Chi Hanfan's current overdraft will not leave serious sequelae, it also has no special effects. Medicine or corresponding treatment methods can only rely on rest to slowly recover. "How about leaving Lao Chi here and we enter the hive with these equipment?" Ghost Owl suggested. "Lao Chi is like this now. Not only can he not be used as a combat force, but he will also become a burden. We need to allocate extra manpower to take care of and protect him." "Don't think I'm being harsh, that's the truth, I'm thinking about it for everyone, and for Lao Chi." "I know what you said is the truth," Hound nodded with a straight face, "but there is no way I would leave Lao Chi with this thing as a hostage. I still don't know how true the words it just said are. Just a few lies. What other purpose does it have for asking us to rescue Kailan? What if we fall out with it later and it threatens us with Lokai? What should I do?" This. Ghost Owl suddenly fell into a dilemma. "Jolajitu, you go pick out the equipment first, and you will be responsible for carrying Lao Chi out later. Remember, the person passing by the drainage compartment is helping Lao Chi put on the deep diving suit again," Hound said. "The blasphemer mecha, it should be no problem to put one more person in the cockpit, there is no need for us to keep Lao Chi here." "Okay," Zwalajitu responded immediately, strode to the equipment rack, and started picking. It only took Zwalajitu a little more than a minute to complete the arming. He chose a set of heavy power armor, plus a wall shield with a built-in energy shield generator that could also be used as a small laser cannon. And a heavy battle axe with its own jet thruster. This equipment is almost exactly the same as his usual weapon configuration, but its technological content and lethality have been improved by more than one level. Ghost Owl chose a set of armor with dozens of hidden jets, and it was obvious at first glance that it was specialized in mobility. In terms of weapons, since this set of armor comes with two ejection-type fist blades on the wrist, he did not choose a melee weapon. Instead, he took a rapid-fire railgun and the corresponding energy blocks and ammunition. In addition to things, he also chose some throwing objects. Although he couldn't understand the characters of the Hive civilization, he could still understand the signs printed on the throwing objects: explosion, burning, freezing, electrode, etc. Ghost Owl simply brought two of each kind. Hound was the last one to come out of the equipment warehouse. Although Layton was not here, Layton's fear of lack of firepower was perfectly inherited by Hound. He chose a piece of equipment with 4 controllable mechanical arms. His power armor, coupled with his own hands, can control 6 weapons at the same time. In terms of firepower alone, he is undoubtedly the most powerful among the 3. The operating instructions for these equipment are very user-friendly. Most of them have simple and easy to understand logo patterns with very little text content. The UI design of the built-in display of the helmet is also very clean. Unlike the power armor on the Arc, which has various dense status parameters. They want to fill up the entire screen, and sometimes even block the wearer's field of vision. Let's go, this time it's our turn to rescue that little brat. Lanhound patted the heavy firearm in his hand. After equipping the shotgun with a cannon, he suddenly felt much more confident. Noah's Ark, West District 1, Underground Ice House. The dying Lin Kaiming lay in the ruins, breathing hard. His chest had been penetrated, and despite emergency treatment, blood was still pouring out from the wound. The bright red blood foam stained the fragmented combat uniform jacket into dark brown, and some places had dried and hardened. The surface shows fine cracks. The body of his subordinate was lying not far to the left, but Lin Kaiming couldn't even turn his head to take a look. His cervical vertebra was fractured when he crashed into the pile of rubble. Don't ask why he fought. There is also the problem of fractures if the neck protector is on the suit. Without the neck protector, his entire head would have been separated from his body long ago. Those mass-produced fallen angels didn't last until the end of the operation time, and they were all dismembered. The hard body shell was smashed and cut off, and the living CPU inside was directly dragged out and torn apart. In front of the monster, this unit known as the Secret Ace is like a soaked card, so crisp that it can be torn into pieces. The remains of Seraph, doesn't it take an hour to thaw? Why? Lin Kaiming murmured in his heart. Blood kept pouring into his throat, but he couldn't even cough. His eyes looked upward. The top of the underground ice house had been penetrated. From here, he could see the opened dome and the fleet that stayed on standby above the dome. A drop of water dripped down from directly above. It seemed to be formed after the ice in the ice house melted. 30 minutes, should be here soon. Water drops hit Lin Kaiming's face. He felt a little cold, but it seemed to be just his illusion. The cold feeling was not only on his face, but also on the ends of his limbs, and it was gradually spread towards the center of the torso. Lin Kaiming knew that he was going to die soon. The vanguard force he led did not complete the mission. This was a completely expected ending. But what was unexpected was that long before they reached the bottom of the underground ice house, the remains of Seraph has been thawed and integrated with the target. As long as the fleet can destroy that thing, even we win. Lin Kaiming's consciousness has entered the dying stage. He saw more water droplets dripping from above. These water droplets were of different sizes, lengths, and shapes. The colors were also very different. Some were turquoise, some were iron gray, and some were actually as white as snow. Strangeness. Like a flashback that often occurs when a person is about to die, Lin Kaiming suddenly widened his eyes, and his gradually dwindling consciousness gathered together again. He suddenly discovered that these water drops falling from the sky were not water droplets at all, but one battleship after another crashed. The battleship is falling. He felt the air trembling, the sky seemed to be on fire, the flames burned from the sky to the ground, and the entire ark was swallowed up by the raging fire. Lin Kaiming didn't know whether this was the environment he saw before he died or a real scene, but his heart was already shrouded in endless despair. If even the fleet couldn't destroy the monster, I'm afraid there would be no more on the ark. There is nothing that can destroy it. As a senior executive of the Crisis Management Department, Lin Kaiming naturally knew that the undead crew would still have a way to abandon the ship and escape. However, after losing the Ark and Alpha Star, the only habitable planet found in the universe, he once again entered the interstellar. Can the drifting humans survive? The answer is no. Humans prepared for decades before embarking on the road to find a new home. They still encountered dozens of crises on the journey that were enough to wipe out the entire human race. But now they are escaping in a hurry, and the probability of survival is almost infinitely close to zero. Is it over? Is everything over? Lin Kaiming thought reluctantly, but his vision was gradually enveloped in darkness, and the explosions in his ears continued to move away from him. Even the wounds on his body seemed to no longer hurt. He suddenly wanted to take a nap. Maybe if he fell asleep, he would no longer have to think about these troublesome things. P.S. Thank you for your concern. After taking ibuprofen for 2 days, the high fever finally went down today. It is temporarily stable between 37.5 degrees Celsius and 38 degrees Celsius. My energy and sleep are also much better. My throat hurt like crazy, and I deeply experienced the feeling of swallowing a knife mentioned by the guys who had sex online. If the readers here are also suffering from this kind of suffering, or have just started to experience symptoms, or want to be prepared, I will give you 3 suggestions that I have personally practiced and are very effective. 1. Eat more fruits, especially its pears. Drinking water directly will hurt your throat, but eating pears can relieve this pain to a great extent. 2nd, loquat paste or autumn pear paste. In order to avoid suspicion of advertising, I won't say which brand I use. Anyway, everyone should try their best to choose a reliable big brand. 3rd, various kinds of throat lozenges. Holding one in your mouth will make you feel more comfortable when you feel like you can't swallow. In addition to the sore throat, the remaining symptoms are aches and dizziness, but I can still sit in front of the computer and type. Today's chapter has 4,000 words. I started typing intermittently from 9:30 in the morning to around 7 in the evening, and my head was still confused. Yes, I hope my condition will be better tomorrow. Everyone should also take care of themselves. PPS. Thanks to Lonely Desolate Country for the 1,500 starting coins, thanks to book friend 20220824031840752 for the 100 starting coins. There should be an extra chapter updated tomorrow, which is probably about a rebellion that broke out during the Ark's interstellar travel. I recently read the novel The Wandering Earth, and it just happened to make me think of it.